Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wednesday night podcast that everybody's been talking about. It's Hey, did you see this? Hello and welcome to Hey, did you see this one? My name's Jason, and this week's host is our boy Steven.
Hello. Oh, I'm the host?
Yeah, well, you picked the movie.
Oopsies.
You
no,
frick.
I'm joking, I know. I know I'm the host.
You frick.
You frick. Hi. Hello. Welcome back to
Hi, hello.
episode of Hey, did you see this one? I'm your host. My name's Steve. I'm joined with Jason and Kaylin, my two best friends. I didn't mean to laugh so heartily after I said that.
When you add the laugh.
Whoops. This week we are doing a movie that I suggested based on the whimsical Flight of Fancy known as Toys that we did last week. A very bright and colorful but uncomfortable and odd movie. So I thought, why don't we keep the uncomfortable and odd and add darkness? So much darkness. This movie is so dark that the entire movie is at nighttime. The movie is called Dark City. Let me just say, let the tuning commence, or whatever the fuck they say.
Is it tuning?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like they're tuning up. They say tuning, but it's because they all have accents.
I thought I couldn't hear it for a bunch of it, and I wrote down the first time that I wrote it down. I wrote tombing, like T-O-M-B, and like they're tombing.
I think the first one I heard was queuing, and then I heard later on them say tuning, and then I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, it's like they're tuning the world, right? That's like they're tuning a piano almost. They're trying to find the perfect balance of whatever. They're like the psyche and memory and thought processes and emotions of human beings by experimenting on them. They're tuning people.
Tune in.
This movie is from the year of our Lord, 1998. It is a noir science fiction
neo-noir
movie
neo-noir
movie.
Yeah, horror detective. Like,
I mean, it's not even neo-noir at the end of the day. It's like noir. Like everything looks like it's set in this 1950s, and there's smoke everywhere and slow-moving ceiling fans and stuff. Like it's like very much noir.
The only reason I would say neo-noir is because of how sci-fi it gets.
Yeah,
towards the end.
I mean, there's even a line of dialogue later on where one of the guys, Mr. Hand, is like, "We have taken memories to build this world from all eras and all minds." So it's basically supposed to be like a world out of time, which it really does feel like. It's so strange that you're like, you would never see some of these elements mesh together in real life unless you're at some sort of twisted amusement park.
Also, don't show this movie to any flat earthers.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah. So yeah, the movie is Dark City. I guess we'll start off by giving our personal introductions to when we saw this movie for the first time, starting with Kaylin.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're here every week.
My first introduction to this movie, I think, was either last year or the year or the year before. Somewhere around when there wasn't really much new movies happening, and I think I watched everything that was on Netflix or something like that.
Wait, there was a time where there weren't new movies coming out? When did that happen?
No, there was new movies. It was just very slow. Yeah, I see what you're
He's doing a bit.
I was so I started doing the whole 100 movies you should see before you die, but I pretty much have all of those movies.
Kaylin, that's such a bleak list.
Is this on that list?
No, I don't think it is. But that's what I started doing was first I started doing that, but it was all movies that I either already had or knew of or whatever.
If it's 100 movies, I would maybe put this on my.
I would put this
list.
on.
I do.
I don't know if I would put this in 300 movies that you have to see.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Jason, I don't even know if you've seen 300 movies based on the history of this podcast.
I have.
Actually, he has them numbered.
I saw 200 movies in 2020 alone, so put that in your fucking neo.
Well, I want you to go through this list and show me what other 199 movies that you would put on the list before putting this.
All of those.
A lot of stand-up comedy.
Oh god, those don't count as movies.
They absolutely do count compared to my when you compare it to my
stand-up
metrics.
special is not a movie. I hate to break that to you.
Hey man, okay, fine. I only watched like 15.
No.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, we're getting off topic.
The Godfather,
that's what
The
viewers
Matrix.
want. That's what they like. They love tangents. They love our quirky
Do they?
interruptions.
We get literally no. We got no.
Jason listed 2 movies, and they were The Godfather and The Matrix.
We got no. We got no feedback. So I don't know how you know these
2 of
metrics.
Like universally agreed upon best movies ever made.
Goodfellas, Godfather Part 2, which I haven't actually seen, but I put
Goodfellas.
that. I would put that
Why are
before
you
this
putting it on
movie.
your list? Okay, anyway, Kaylin, continue. You watched it during the pandemic, it sounds like.
I digress. No, well, so I looked up like, movies you gotta see before you die, but I pretty much like saw them / owned them. And I was like, well, I want to see some that I haven't seen yet. And then there was like a handful on there that I haven't heard of or seen or whatever, so I checked those out. One of them was like a Nicolas Cage movie, Bad Lieutenant or something like that, which was really weird. Anyway, so and then I started going through. I think I found Roger Ebert's it was alphabetical, and he just like kind of, him and his team or whatever would.
So I own this movie on Blu-ray. Roger Ebert loved this movie so much that he did an audio commentary track that is on the Blu-ray.
I heard
that I own.
Heard about that. That's awesome. That's super. I think that's super awesome. He's on the Blu-ray commentary.
It was his best movie of 1998.
I have a theory about why nobody remembers this movie.
It's a shame.
And it rhymes with Patrix.
I don't know if that's a theory or if that's a fact.
That movie came out after this movie, though, which kind of like
that's what I'm saying.
Not say overshadowed, but
it's anyway,
the movie was filmed in the same studio, and some of the same sets were used from this movie before the Matrix. True. They had overlap, and like there's a lot of actors that are in both, and that's why all the characters in this movie sound so weird. Is because all the extras are Australian people trying to do New York accents.
Hello there.
I've worked here for 20 years. I did.
Mate,
like, what accent is this? Yeah. A dingo ate my baby.
They weren't trying to appeal to the masses with this movie, though. Kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't trying to be like a watered down.
Yeah, the director, what the fuck's his name? Alex Proyas.
Proyas? Yeah,
he shopped it around until he found a studio that would let him have as much creative freedom as he wanted, because he was like, I have a very specific vision and it's going to be really weird, and I don't want anybody telling me how to make my movie.
Yeah. So I started going through Roger Ebert's list alphabetically, and I'm pretty sure that's where I saw this. I'm pretty sure it was on there, not the 100 movie list.
I mean, it would definitely be on his list because he loved it so much that
he praised it.
Audio commentary, the whole movie he watched and recorded, and it's on the Blu-ray. Roger Ebert.
I need to get the
movie
physical.
Blew my freaking brains out when I saw it the first time, and he saw the theatrical cut, which is shit. I started watching it today, and I was like,
the theatrical's watered down for sure.
And there's a terrible narration at the very beginning that explains the entire plot, basically, and I'm like, wait, what? Why would you do that? There's so many good twists and turns you ruined.
Because the big movie production companies don't want to. They want to make sure their viewers are. They have someone holding their hand. Or whatever.
Yeah, like the original Dune came with a book. Just like read the book Dune while you're waiting for the movie to come on. It was actually a leaflet that had all the terms on it that you were going to experience.
I thought you
meant
they just gave them a copy of the book.
That's
Dune.
the joke I'm making. That's the joke I'm making. But you got a little pamphlet when you went into the David Lynch Dune that had like all the terms, more backstory than they give you, because that movie does just a giant exposition dump. Actually, a few throughout the movie. It's almost unwatchable now. But if you were a huge dork for the book, which you probably were if you're going to see that 3-hour nonsense in theaters, this could have used a little bit of that. So I think I could have benefited from seeing the theatrical cut, but I watched whatever I watched, and it didn't have any of that.
Didn't have Kiefer Sutherland at the beginning being like, there was a race of aliens
with his stupid fucking
corpses.
He's at the beginning of the director's cut, isn't he? He just doesn't do a narrative or something. Is that correct?
Yeah, he shows up and he's like,
Yeah.
I bet you're wondering why I'm all through your thoughts in your mind and your brain.
"You're never gonna believe how I got into this one."
He killed it. He did a fucking great job.
Yeah, he's a really good actor, man.
He is. Also,
he killed the role.
Hurt.
I loved his weird scientist character. It
Yeah.
was like
William
He
Hurt.
talks
very
in
comic
3
booky.
words.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
every little blurts.
William Hurt's also a fantastic actor. I learned from this. I've only seen him as Thaddeus Thunderbolt, whatever, from the MCU, which he's
That's
great.
the only other time you've seen.
I've never
William Hurt.
really seen William Hurt in movies.
He's in
before.
What about
many
Mr.
movies.
Brooks? What about Mr. Brooks
I've
with Kevin Costner?
Never seen Mr. Brooks. I got 3
Okay,
more movies for my
Kaylin,
list.
maybe pick a more well-known movie.
I
than
have
Mr.
3 more
Brooks.
movies for my list of movies that are better than this.
It's a good movie.
And they're
He's in
Dark
The
World,
Village, M. Night Shyamalan's The
Dark
Village.
World, Taken, and Star Wars Episode 1.
He's making a joke about Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
He's confusing actors on purpose.
I was.
Sorry.
All right, Kaylin. So you got the recommendation from Roger Ebert and you watched it, and I guess that the second time you watched it was today or yesterday.
The image that I have for my background, I'm pretty sure I saw this image, and for some reason I thought the clock behind him was a roulette table. Anyway,
You thought it was like a National Lampoon's Las Vegas Vacation style movie or
Like
something.
when he's electrocuting
like he,
on
like,
the
goes money
Christmas
to, like,
Vacation.
sharks or something,
He's on a
or
roulette wheel.
or something. Yeah. So, but yeah, so like Roger Ebert, definitely saying it's praised. I'm like, well, shit, I gotta check this shit out. Sorry for swearing. And yeah, so I watched it. It's definitely not your, like we were saying earlier, you're just kind of force-fed, hold your hand movie.
Which
It's
is
a
why
film.
a lot of people like it. Yeah, like it's
Well,
it's sort of
not
like a
lot.
puzzle that you're putting together
People
as you
that
go.
do, though, really do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a movie
And-
that you can watch multiple times and you can kind of spot things you missed and piece together some stuff that you didn't necessarily pay attention to the first time because you were trying to put together the larger plot, but then the smaller stuff falls into place a little easier on a second viewing.
Yeah. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to do me, I like to do my multiple viewings. I mostly just do that with my physical copies because I have the other extra stuff to look at and stuff.
Yeah. For this one, I watched it I watched it once, just watching it normally, and then today I watched it while I was working with the director commentary on.
Nice.
He didn't have a lot to say that I was like, I need to make notes on this. I was just like, okay.
Cool.
You're
Little
just talking
factoids.
about-
Little
he was
tidbits.
mostly just talking about the troubles he ran into a lot of the time.
Studios trying to control him or whatever.
basically.
But yeah, that was my first time. It was different. It was like you said, like you're like you're the whole time you're like trying to figure out what's going on, and then at the end it kind of like the kind of reveal or whatever at the end. I recommend it. Go buy it.
Go buy it. Wow.
We're not at the end of the movie or the review yet, but okay. Jason, your turn.
Well, I watched this movie for the first time today. I vaguely remember it coming out, and I do sort of remember it being kind of groundbreaking. The CGI, like, it has some groundbreaking CGI stuff in it that it's not so much just like CGI objects right in your face that look bad. It's more of like the way they transition CGI, so it doesn't. It looked dated, but it looked
A little
like
more palatable.
It made sense, and I think I'm going somewhere with this. I think, as far as I remember, this was a movie that came out, and people were like, "You got to check this thing out because it kind of puts all of these notions you have about what a noir detective movie can be on its ear." Unfortunately, during the pandemic, I watched a little movie. I read a little book and then watched a little movie called Naked Lunch, and I couldn't stop thinking about the icky feelings that movie and book gave me, mostly the movie. And I think it's because a lot of the sets were recycled. I think they're backlot sets that are just used. Like, I saw some Gotham in there too, I think. But there's one part where they're underneath the like A train, that like famous A train. It's in like Grand Theft Auto 4, you know, like they're underneath the A train. There's stores on either side, and that makes me feel sick to my stomach to see because of Naked Lunch, because that movie is so like viscerally gross. And unfortunately,
too much nudity and food in the same shots.
Well, no. It's a little bit. If you never saw the movie and think that that's what it's about based on the title, then sure. But it's just a weird mind fuck, and I read the book like right before it, so it's just I've got a lot of gross feelings from.
So you hate that train.
I hate that train.
The train is in this movie a lot.
But this movie felt like a more sane version of Naked Lunch, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Which is a lot to say because this movie is insane.
This movie is insane. It makes sometimes you're like, okay, there was a couple times where I like wrote down what I thought was happening to try to like put it in line, put it in a straight line, and I would type it out and be like, that doesn't make sense. Delete. Okay, type it again. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Delete. And it's mostly when Dr. Schreiber is doing his exposition dump stuff, and it's like, okay, I got this. The way he explained it. Perfect, got it. It's like a kind of a Matrix thing where they're like stuck in a world and they're using their memories and blah blah blah, and then my brain would go, but it's also like Naked Lunch where it's like it feels icky. It's like I feel icky because it's all like this gross grit. There's this grit to it.
Editing,
but also the idea of that is inherently uncomfortable, and like that's the point of it, right? It's like imagine that everything you thought that happened to you today was not real, and someone had just broken into your apartment 5 minutes ago and implanted a false memory into your head to make you think that the day that you had was the day that you had.
But all of those,
and every day is that. All
of those things that you just mentioned are all weird horror, like weirdly horror-y. You know, like they're all weirdly, like they're even like if I like everything looks normal to me where I'm sitting right now. It doesn't seem out of place. But once he immediately is like, when's the last time you saw Daytime? Remember Daytime? And he's like, well, I don't. See, that shit scares me. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of horror going on. I think that almost Naked Lunch is a good companion piece to this movie, because that puts this movie more in perspective, I would say. But I don't recommend watching Naked Lunch because it's gross. It makes me feel gross. Watch it. It's not that gross.
Yeah, sometimes watching a gross movie is worth it, and you just never have to watch it again.
It's David Cronenberg, right? So it's David Cronenberg trying to adapt a story that the chapters were written in a way that the book is supposed to be able to be read in any order. But most chapters are about cascading jizz. That's what most of the conceit of the story is about. Everybody's jizzing their ectoplasm all over the place and doing heroin in the worst descriptions of it possible. The movie has none of that. The movie is like tries to like streamline a story out of that book by William S. Burroughs. It's all a mess.
I don't want to cut you off too hard, but we have talked about Naked Lunch on this podcast before, so I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
Like, retreading on.
No. Okay. But my point is the whole time I was watching this movie, when they were in the city, I couldn't. That was just a tumor in my brain. When they went into like the.
What about when you watch Spider-Man and he's hanging out near that? Are you like, oh, Naked Lunch?
No, because I saw
Spider-Man, get out of there!
Many years before. What I will say is when they're in the actual stranger realm, like when they're in their little cave world,
underground or whatever.
I liked
the big egg sack at the bottom of the city. Yeah.
I liked that shit. I liked how they like do that thing.
Yeah.
It's weird. They kind of remind me of Hellraisers a little bit. The Hellraisers, where they literally look like Hellraisers.
Very much like Hellraisers, yeah.
Pinhead.
Well, yeah. The whole idea behind the strangers kind of like remind me of vampires, and they are very much designed after like the classic Nosferatu style vampire. Yeah. Like completely hairless and pale, and
like if the Matrix,
gaunt.
The Matrix did have a vampire, but if it had a Nosferatu style vampire virus, this would be a perfect look for it. Mm-hmm. You know,
that maybe they were like they did that and they're like, oh, it looks way too much like Dark City.
Yeah,
I gotta not do this.
They also look like the good guys.
Yeah,
that's true. I guess that's correct. When you come out of a pod, you basically look like one of these motherfuckers.
Yeah, then you put your leather jacket on and go and start shooting guns upside down. Anyway, that's
So
Long
the first time
TLDR, I watched it today. Yeah, I watched it today. I paid
still
attention
good,
to it. I made sure to watch most of it when I wasn't like on a break at work. You know,
One long stretch.
two long stretches.
Nice.
Before we get into it, I mean, I should preface this whole conversation by saying that, like, I don't really buy a lot of Blu-rays, and when I do buy one, it's because I really enjoy the movie, and I was half expecting to watch this and not enjoy it as much as I have in the past, because I feel like I've grown and I'm a different person. But I watched it and I was like,
Even better.
this movie's good. This movie's fucking good. I like this movie a lot. And the reason that it's good is because so much weird stuff happens in it that if you do give it a couple of years on the back burner and then come back to it, there's still little things that you forget, details that you're like trying to piece together things again. You remember the large swashes of details, the larger strokes of things, but the little smaller details you kind of let fade away. And it's just as delightful to be like, oh yeah, I remember this now. But then sometimes you're like, I don't remember this. Wait a minute. So I have watched this movie quite a few times over my lifetime, and I don't recall the first time I watched it, but I do remember it being on TV and it being too scary looking for me.
Was this on Showcase? It felt like a movie that you would see on Showcase.
Yeah.
That's another part of the. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'll be quick, but that's another part of the ickiness I feel when I watch certain movies. It's because they were on like late night when I was 14 on Showcase, so I also feel like I shouldn't be watching this.
They're scary or something, or there's going to be like
they're weirdly like they're artsy and they're fucking weird. And
it's odd, and that this movie is a perfect example of that. Like, I probably saw it at some point and was like, oh no, these monster men are probably going to eat somebody or rip them open or something. And there's not really any kind of hyper violence in this movie. There is a lot of disturbing imagery for sure, and for me, hyper violence affects me so little compared to something that's just very disturbing looking. You can have somebody like break a thumb backwards and I'm like, ugh! But then you can have somebody get ripped in half completely and I'm like, meh, whatever.
Like, did you see the TikTok I sent you today of a person holding like a book and the person cuts into the book and it's cake, and then they cut into the arm and it's like, cake, and the guy goes,
yes.
You didn't send me the TikTok.
Yeah, because I don't know how much you use TikTok. If you want to subscribe to Jason Talk,
not get so offended all the time when you're not included in things.
If you want to be subscribed to Jason Talk, talk to me after the show, and I will start sending you every TikTok that I send to Boba Blackfly and Camfess and Foxy Moron and Maddie Flops.
But I did connect pretty hard with somebody in school, university, when I was first into like the film studies program. And I met a friend who I still talk to this day, and he was like, have you ever seen Dark City? And I immediately broke into like a Kiefer Sullivan impression. I'm like, no, I've never seen
I've never seen it before.
This movie. What movie? What is it about? And like, so from that, we had like this weird spawn friendship where like we just kind of like talked about this movie and then other movies that are sort of similar, or have similar themes or similar styles in terms of visuals, and we became pretty good pals over it. And it kind of holds like a weird special spot in my heart. And then when I got the Blu-ray a couple of years ago, realizing that there's a lot of people that secretly love this movie, but there's not a lot of people that you can just walk up to and talk to about it. You have to find them. It's like the definition of a cult classic, where you find a person who loves Dark City and you can just sit there and talk about Dark City for hours. And then one of the stars of the movie, one of the biggest stars of the ultimate cult classic of all time, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And the guy, Mr. Hand is from that, right?
Mr. Hand is the creator. He's the creator of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, but he plays the...
Yeah, he plays like he plays like Igor, basically. Yeah. But he's like, he I think he wrote like most of the music for it, and like he's a cool dude, man. Nice. Mr. Hand. The coolest stranger and the coolest Igor.
I'm Mr. Hand, and I'm gonna steal all your thoughts, and then I'm gonna trick your wife, who might not be your wife, into believing that I know her, but also I am your husband.
Yeah.
This movie was hard to follow. I'm glad that I'm intelligent, like smart. So I'm not after the movie. I'm not just like, oh, I don't know what the hell.
I mean, you pretty much just described exactly what happens. Like that happens. That's a thing that happens in the movie.
I feel like I have to prove to you guys that I actually watch the movie sometimes too. So I hyper focus on the correct things.
But that's also a very interesting aspect of this movie as well, right? Like the fact that they can switch and swap people's memories to pair them together, to break them apart. Everything that happened in their lives, that was not of their own accord, right? Like her cheating on him was not her decision. They put that into her head. She maybe didn't even do that, and he maybe didn't even find out that she did that. They just put that image into both of their heads so that they would have an argument. We don't even know if the argument was real. We don't know if they've actually been separated for 3 weeks or if they just learned this a couple of days ago. But
they just met.
The best way they showed that, I thought, was when they showed the two people. They're like, oh, I had to work all day. Oh, you're never here. And then they do the 12 o'clock and they pass out into their food. And then they tune. And then they're like rich now, and the room changes and now they're rich. And they're like, oh, those poor people. I thought that was the best way that they showed how different people's lives can be after a tuning. I thought that was a very good moment.
The thing, that is one of the most sort of impactful moments. Like I guarantee you, if I ask you about this movie in 3 years' time, that moment will probably stick out in your head, because that's one that really, when you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, there's a weird scene where these two poor people become rich in an instant and their whole house transforms into a mansion around them.
I'm never gonna forget. Cool. I'm never gonna forget echolocation mind bullets ever, for as long as I live, though.
Yeah, that's a little silly. I'll say that much. At the end of this movie, it was like, okay, this is a little silly. But you know what? The rest of the movie is okay.
I have a bit of a theory about the movie maker himself. I think he wanted to make an 80s kind of schlocky 80s action kind of noir. Well, hold on. Okay. But he wanted to do it as big budget and as meaningful as possible. Like he wanted to do it in this way that has like a huge cast, lots of background actors, a really like big story. Like before The Matrix, this was probably the fucking most mind-blowing thing people had seen. Because you've watched two different.
Oh, sorry, no, I was taking a sip because I thought you weren't done. He didn't want to make a big schlocky thing. He wanted to make a very odd piece of art. Like he wanted to make an art film, but he wanted it to marry science fiction and noir in a way that hadn't been done since like Blade Runner,
noir.
Basically.
Is sci noir a genre?
No.
Sci noir? Well, kind of.
It's
like
not
cyberpunk.
It's cyberpunk is not. It's not the same. Cyberpunk is like an aesthetic, whereas noir is basically like hard-boiled detective and like also sort of a visual style. Right?
I think I like
Kalen's costume versus like.
I think I like the term sci noir though. I think coining that phrase here is good, because this very much.
Why don't we just call it cyber noir? Why are we calling it sci noir?
Sci-fi, because like sci-fi noir.
Okay, sure.
Come on, man.
Fine,
Have a little whimsy into your life. Sci noir is easy to say. I'm gonna name my firstborn Sci Noir.
My name's Sci Noir.
My name is Sci Noir.
Yeah.
I only watched hard-boiled cop films and Star Wars.
Yeah. And I watched them on my robot arm.
That's gonna be a thing soon. You're like the quarterback in
anyway,
football.
sorry.
Wait, back. Hold on. What?
They have the plays on their arm.
Oh yeah. That's just a tablet on their arm, though.
Yeah, but soon.
Why would you replace your biological arm for a cyber arm? Well, I guess, Cyberpunk 2077 is basically you replace all your parts, and then you go cyber psycho when you replace too many parts, and then you're just a robot man with AI controlling, and then you shoot everybody with your explosive missiles.
Explosive missile arms. That's when you know you've gone two arms too far. So
That opening scene to the cartoon is fucking crazy. If you never played the game, the opening scene of the cartoon captures what that game is like perfectly.
What cartoon?
I haven't watched the show yet, but yeah.
The cyberpunk cartoon on Netflix that just came out.
Oh, nice.
It's a prequel to the game, so it doesn't like spoil anything.
What game?
Cyberpunk 2077,
Jesus
Kalen,
Christ, Kalen,
Oh.
what the fuck?
which you would love. There's a PS5 version also, and it's fucking really good. If you want to dump 200 hours into like a Fallout
Yeah, it's also
style.
very long.
Yeah.
But I had fun. I took a week off just to play it.
What?
And I had to. Well, I also played it when it first came out, so it was.
So you
not
took a
that
week
great.
to get through 10 hours. 'Cause it
No,
was broken.
after the first couple days, it was okay. It wasn't as broken as everybody whines about. So I can't. Oh wait. Well, sorry. You're partially right, but like your theory is not correct. But like, he wanted to make a noir movie, but he wanted to make it have almost invisible science fiction undertones until it becomes overtly obvious that you're now watching a science fiction movie. Which is a really cool and interesting concept, but obviously trying to veil something that hard for that long would be very difficult.
And then it goes past sci-fi into fantasy a little bit almost too, right? Like when they're using literally like technic abilities on each other.
Well, I mean that's still, there's still a science fiction element to that because the tuning is a inherent ability of these aliens, basically, right?
Okay.
They are aliens, but they also seem like they're maybe ghosts. Like, where you're like, are they ghost aliens?
They're like not slugs, but they're
like translucent, weird
yeah.
things that don't like moisture for some reason, and like
They don't
when
like
it comes
sun.
out, it's like partially. It almost looks like one of the spirits within from the
Damn
Final
it.
Fantasy spirits.
Damn it!
Within.
I was about to say it's what they call a spirit within.
Ooh.
Well, I beat you to
Literally.
the punch.
I could see spirits within being like a crazy massive.
They
prequel
probably
to
got
this.
their inspiration from this.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I think Final Fantasy Spirits Within ripped this movie off.
Ripped. I thought you hated ripped off. I used.
That's why I said it with such panache because I'm joking.
Used the Matrix. I said the Matrix overshadowed. I didn't even say even borrowed from this movie. I think it just took similar themes and.
Well, listen here.
clips
The Matrix came out literally 1 year later.
1 year
There's
later.
no way in hell that they like took inspiration. It's not like the Wachowskis were on set being like,
No.
holy f-.
Also,
Right, yeah.
The Matrix is more than just like a mind-blowing plot. The things that
There
they
were also
did,
a lot of movies at this time that had this visual style. This
Right.
visual style is very much Matrix, and everybody watches this and they're like, oh, these guys ripped off the Matrix, and it's like, oh, no, the Matrix came out after, and it's like the Matrix ripped off this, and it's like, no, there was like
But
50 movies that came out
the
within
Matrix-
a 5-year period that all looked like this.
the thing about the Matrix is it took like the kung fu genre to the next level. It took the gunfight genre to the next level.
Almost like live action. Well, maybe not live action anime, but like
It absolutely is one of the first live action animes. Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. And also, bullet time permeated movies for a fucking straight decade. Like was in every single action movie.
you know you've made it when everyone is biting your shit.
to various
Biting your
degrees of it. Most of the time.
Shout out to the butt shot at the beginning, or second scene or whatever it was.
What are you talking about?
Rufus, aka John Murdoch, getting out of the bathtub, you get a little shot of his butt.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he's nude. Yeah.
What's that purple?
Also,
goo he's
again,
in?
this movie, this movie is an elevation of, or a realization that film. You got to remember when you're making a movie that it's a visual representation. It's an art. It's an art.
Yeah.
Film is an art, and like the framing of this movie, everything is beautifully shot. Like that opening shot of just like the lantern going up and down over the bathtub, or not lantern, but the overhead light.
Like,
Which you then realize later on
yeah,
is going back and forth like that wildly because Dr. Schreiber has literally just like, oh God, and like ran away. Like you don't realize that for like hours later.
Which is
and,
one of my favorite reveals of the movie. That he was there seconds before the movie starts.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a good butt. Kalen, you're right. It is a good butt.
Can we talk
Maybe we
about,
should get it.
Can we talk about the prostitute's boobs then, if we're talking about butts? Because that
I was gonna say after the butt shot, you get a boob shot.
no, but not the dead prostitute, but
Not the dead boobs, the alive boobs.
the alive later boobs. Those were a good set of boobs. Welcome to Hey, Did You See This One, where we're gonna talk about people's body parts like weird sex creeps. Cancel me, Daddy.
Cancel me, Daddy. It's all I want.
I have a question for you, Steven.
What?
If it's okay.
As long as it's not a weird, embarrassing question.
As long as it doesn't involve pooping.
No, and no. So the opening scene with Kiefer, was that like a miniature, and then they green screened it, him on it or whatever?
That was definitely, they did composite him onto there for sure.
Yeah.
But it, a lot of the sets in this were miniatures that they filmed, like you can tell, right? Like there's just something slightly off about everything. It feels too surreal, almost looks very painterly. Like the decay on buildings is like super angular, and then like the brick beneath it is so clearly brick that it's like this is all constructed and fabricated, and it feels fake. And like that's part of the story, right? Is like everything is fake, the whole world is fake around them, right? That's why everything sort of has this artificiality to it.
They're in a little rat maze.
Which, there's a rat maze. They show a rat maze, and guess what it's shaped like? A spiral! Wait, are spirals important in this movie? Let's talk about it, guys.
I'm just trying to figure out. It's the maze. Also, the maze that they show that Schreiber's using is the fucking easiest maze. If you I took a good look at it. Yeah, but like even for a rat, dude, I was just looking at it. And I was like,
when you're in it, though, you're looking from a bird's eye view.
They spent like no time on that set piece. Is my point.
They spent no time on that set piece. That whole room of scientific equipment and glowing floor and the costumes and the camera angles.
The room was fantastic. I just thought that maze was a little
okay. The maze is supposed to look like that because it connects to a bunch of other visual indicators later in the movie.
The next thing you're
supposed
to tell
be
me
paying attention
is
to.
Those shots of the fingerprint were supposed to mean something too.
You mean the spiral fingerprints that look exactly like the spiral maze that we're talking about right now?
Well, yes. I mean, that's just what fingerprints look like.
No, but like
his are like perfect
a
spirals.
Perfect. So here, the scene that we're at where they show the dead woman on the floor and she's got those blood marks. She's got big spirals that match perfectly with like the center. Like I don't know, can we get a fingerprint? Not really.
I can't.
Well, okay, so the spiral is continuously presented to us throughout the entire movie. That is important, and this is how I read it, is that the spirals are meant to be an indicator that a tuning has just happened, and the tuning, they're able to, completely change the city in the way that they want it to be built, but there are small, subtle things that they can't control, and they may not even be aware of. So a tuning happens, and then he kills her, and she's got spirals on her. A tuning happens, and his fingerprints are spiraled, and that's when he's able to use his powers. That tuning also potentially gave him the ability to use this thing. Later on, the detective is looking at his coffee, and then he's looking at the fingerprint spiral. His coffee is perfectly spiraling, and a tuning is also just taken place.
I want a barista to give me a spiral coffee, a fancy spiral coffee. That's what I want.
That'd be pretty cool.
So I thought that was supposed to be sort of like a residue to the Kaylin, sick.
No, you don't need to indulge it. That's fine. It was funnier when you didn't. Go ahead.
That's true. I just want to say that like literally every time a tuning happens, the buildings are doing an almost Inception
spiral,
dreamlike spiral.
They're spiraling upwards. Exactly.
Not folding over on one another like Inception, but they're crashing and then they spiral.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of looked at it as an always changing / almost like inescapable, like what's the thing called in water when it does that, like a whirlpool or whatever, right? Like
maelstrom.
Well, a whirlpool I think is a more but a maelstrom is like the storm version.
A latent
a large whirlpool is called a maelstrom.
That's true. Usually because a leviathan is coming to wreck your boat, or a kraken.
Or a cracking. But Kaylin, no, I do like that it's also indicative of a turning clock. The clock is turning constantly, and they stop the clock. And like, the way I sort of look at it as like they're not stopping time because it's not like everybody's freezing. They're all just falling asleep, right? So and that clock is still going, and that's what's causing this like spiraling, right? It's like everything stopped, but the time is still moving, so everything's spiraling. Anyway,
how long did you think the tuning was? Do you think it was like an hour process, or?
You know what? It probably is just as long as they want it to be. If they only need to snap a couple people into new lives, it's 20 minutes. If they need to do like a whole sector, it's like we got to take 5 hours to do this because it's not like a quick process. They're having to like lug people around and like jab them in the forehead. And
that's what I wanted to mention during this show tonight. It's very like. It reminded me of like Santa Claus going to everybody's house on Christmas Eve. They have to go to everybody in this city and put.
I don't think they have to do everybody, do they?
Well, it seemed.
I don't think they have to do everybody.
There was that scene though where they're going around, like they have their different teams and they're going around to all the places and changing them and putting costumes on.
But the evidence that they don't do it to everybody is that detective, the other detective, the one who's lost his mind, because like if they wanted to, they could go change his mind as well, right? But they don't, because
Winooski woke up though, and then went on the went crazy.
Yeah, but he's still alive for days before he jumps in front of the train, and like I believe that he is also being left alone by them because they also inherently think that that's valuable information for them to
see
study.
What he does.
Yeah, because the whole thing is experiments, right? They're like, we're trying to figure out exactly what makes you uniquely you, and we need you for our survival, so we want to learn everything about you. So if one of you is learned what we're doing but the rest of you don't believe that he's telling the truth, his decomposition as a person will be valuable to us as information, because he's right and all of you are wrong, and he thinks that he's going crazy but he realizes he's not going crazy and everyone just treats him like he's crazy. Like that's pretty valuable information to have, I think. We should probably get into the plot a little bit because we're just kind of jumping all over the place to interesting bits.
I thought we were just doing this episode a little bit different.
I mean, okay, well, I'll start to go through beat for beat, and we're just jumping all over the place right now.
To be fair though, you did start, and we are up to the point where the prostitute is dead and he's confused and clueless. So I'm going to sit back and let you get through a swath of plot line. I'm going to let you get us through a bunch of plot.
I might add tidbits if that's okay.
Kaylin, you add tidbits, but I'm going to let us get through a swath.
I mean, one important detail is that he knocks over a fishbowl and puts the fish into the bathtub that he woke it up inside of because he doesn't want it to die.
What kind of killer does that?
Yeah, which is something that the detectives bring up later on. William Hurt's character specifically says, what kind of murderer kills a woman and then saves a goldfish?
Because humans suck and animals are awesome.
Kill a woman, save a goldfish.
Kaylin's like, I would kill a hooker, but not a fish. What am I, a monster? So he flees the scene basically just as the strangers appear out of the elevators, and we get that cool like music that plays as they're walking down the hallway slowly. And I really like their design. I think they're interesting. They do look like, like Kaylin's doing, like vampires.
Should have painted your face white and shaved your head.
I even sort of not even doing it with a realization that I designed a character in D&D to look almost exactly like Mr. Hand, and I didn't even really do it on purpose. It must have just been like my back brain being like, this looks cool, and then realizing later like, oh, I just bit this hard, but whatever.
Black trench coats and hats is not, they're not the first to do it, but
that's true. Anyway, so following some clues, he's trying to figure out his own name. He learns that he has a wife named Emma, and there's a kind of a scene where he knows his name is Jay Murdoch, but he doesn't know what his actual name is.
Jason Murdoch.
He does say Jason Murdoch at one point after he leaves the hotel, and the guy at the front desk is like, yeah, just because you're a guest doesn't mean I'm gonna treat you well. You're not a true guest until you pay me $50 on the barrelhead or whatever. I can't remember what he says.
When he's guessing all the names, and just like act like a crazy person, and then all of a sudden he sees the street sweeper or whatever, and it's like, oh, I've definitely.
I guess it's important to
life.
mention that like as he's going through the hotel, he's freaking out, and everybody is sleeping, which indicates to us later in the movie, once we learn what's going on, is that there's a tuning happening right now, right? Like everyone's asleep, and then slowly they start to wake up as he's fleeing the hotel. And none of them seem to realize that they've, passed out. But he, goes onto the street, and then he starts to try and figure out who he is. And then, do we cut to the accordion? No, he goes through his suitcase as well, and he finds Shell Beach. And he's like, what is Shell Beach? And he has sort of like these weird memories that kind of flash into his eyes here and there of a place called Shell Beach, which later in the movie we realize is familiar to like everybody in the whole city. Like everybody has a memory of Shell Beach,
and they all know how to get there, no problem. Until they have to think about it for more than 3 seconds, and they're like, "Take the train." I think
the express.
Yeah.
Oh, but it didn't stop. That's because it's the express.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. The
this is a hard one, I think, to try and.
It's because there's so many things that happen back and forth.
Exactly.
We get introduced to like all the characters sort of at the same time, right? We get introduced to Emma, who is his wife. She's like a cocktail lounge singer. Yes, Kaylin, go ahead.
May I make a comment about Inspector Frank, whatever his last name's introduction?
Bum Beach or whatever his name is. Bumstead?
Yeah, Bumstead.
Yeah.
That's fun to say. And I'm sure you guys saw it too, but it was like a perfect example of show don't tell or whatever. The like rookie cop, beat cop or whatever he is, like when the inspector gets there and there's a rookie beat cop or whatever, and then Bumstead says his name, he's like, yeah, like he's excited, like, oh, he knows me or whatever. He's like, your shoes untied, and then does his face.
That's kind of like a classic sort of detective movie thing to show that he never misses any detail of a crime scene or whatever, right? He's just like the first thing he sees is like your shoes untied.
I also like that he talks in like tropey, hard-boiled film noir dialect throughout the whole movie. He's kind of a cock about it, but it's like William Hurt's so fucking good in this movie. I just watched him do his thing. Like when he was acting, I kind of would lose the plot because I was just watching how good he was at being this character.
Yeah, well, he's also very good at like expressing emotion without actually expressing emotion. Like there's the moment where you first see him and he's playing the accordion, and he's got a picture of a woman, but it's like black and white, and at first you're like, is that his wife? But then later he tells you that the accordion was gifted to him by his mother, and you're like, oh, it's his mother. And like maybe he truly has never actually had any memory. Like they've never put a memory into him of him having like a real life with like, an important person other than his mother. And so like the only two things that are important to him are like the truth and his mom. Like those are the only things he ever truly loves, is getting to the bottom of this and his mom giving him an accordion. But then he goes in and he is the one that points out all those small details within the murder scene, and we're kind of getting like an intercut scene of like Emma and Murdoch all at the same time. Murdoch was told by the guy at the hotel that he left his wallet at an automat or something, or somebody called from a place.
They were automats.
Automat,
Foodomatic, auto food.
Automats are an interesting thing because I don't know if they've ever existed really in our world besides going into
vending machines.
Well, I know, but I mean, just the way that it is, like old school diners would have a thing like that where you could go up, right, and you could open the thing and get your piece of pie or your sandwich and then pay for it. But for the whole store to be, you walk in and it's just one big room.
It's so strange, right? Like it's so weird.
I thought that was one of my favorite like early parts of the movie moments where I was like, oh, it's like a weird 1950s vibe, but everything's kind of off. Everything's off about it.
Kind of like designed Batman. By aliens. It's almost like it's like everything is like normal but not, where it's like everything looks appropriate until you like start to look for the details, but then you go in a place like that where like maybe you would just walk by it as a regular person, but then going in there you're like, what the fuck is this?
Gotham City in movies has a lot of that too, where it looks very like normal, it looks very like, sometimes it looks like the 90s, sometimes it looks like the 50s, but then you dig a bit deeper and there's fucking rogues galleries. There's Riddler fucking quests everywhere. There's like, you know what I mean? There's like really...
And I love that there's like a character behind that wall who's just like pulling the plates out and talking, and you'd be like, hey, how's it going? Hey, you're back, huh? Okay, well, yeah, you left your wallet. And he's like, when? He's like, I don't know, the last time you were here. And he's like, well, when was that? And he's like, the time you left your wallet. I don't fucking know. It's like he's giving him no information at all. And then he puts his wallet inside of a thing that he has to pay for his wallet to get. It's like, how are you to pay for it?
That made me laugh. Yeah.
But we get our first glimpse of a possible superpower
tuning
in this scene.
Yeah, he tunes the fuck out of that door. And like I feel like there's like all these examples of him doing it by accident.
Yep.
And then finally he does it on purpose later in the movie, which is, I believe, a scene they added in the director's cut that wasn't in the theatrical cut. Which is like they're in the car and Kiefer Sutherland's like, we can't go there. We gotta go back. And then he like turns around and his eyes flash and then like his glasses get like super heated. Like they all turn red around the frame.
Yeah, I didn't.
He's like,
I definitely watched the theatrical cut or whatever the version. I didn't watch the director's cut. I also have to, it's going to drive me nuts because Madison's dad does this thing where he calls George Carlin, George Carling. And I can't correct him, but I can correct you. It's Kiefer Sutherland.
Was he correcting me?
Yeah.
What am I saying?
Sullivan.
Was I saying Sullivan?
Sullivan so many times.
Oh my god. Kiefer Sullivan? I said Sullivan?
You said Sullivan.
I know that it's Sutherland.
I know that you know that it's Sutherland. That's why
so weird.
I can make sure that you're saying it, but I don't. That's a weird.
Kiefer Sutherland.
I think you're.
You know what? It's because Donald Sutherland is so much easier to say than Kiefer Sullivan.
That's why I just call him Queefer.
Sullivan. Sutherland.
Queefer Sullivan.
Okay. I'm just gonna call him Kiefer. I'm gonna call him Queef for the rest of the movie.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so Queef isn't in the scene that we're talking about, but yeah, he gets his eyeglasses burned onto his head later. Yeah, so he breaks open the thing, but then some cops come in, and then when he first went in there was clearly like a prostitute on the street. And as he's about to leave, the cops are like, "Where are you headed?" And like, really not warranted at this point. They don't have like an APB or anything like that. Like they're just being dicks.
There's a killer on the loose though.
I guess that's true, but I don't know if you're allowed to just like nightstick a guy in the groin on his way out of a bar.
This guy,
or not even a bar, like just getting a sandwich.
This guy does fit the bill.
He's got a jacket.
He's got a jacket on. He's got brown hair.
All right, fine. Blue Lives Matter or whatever.
No.
Is that what you guys are trying to say?
I would like to file an immediate retraction of Steve's previous Blue Lives Matter statement, and I would like to say, in fact, blue lives do not matter.
Okay.
Is that too far the other way?
No, I think that they were being a little bit aggressive and a little bit abusive of their power. You can see it. They are enjoying it. They're not just doing it to be friendly or to stop somebody because they're suspicious. They are being dicks. And then proven point is that when a prostitute comes in and says, "Why don't you just mind your own beeswax?" or something. I can't remember what she says. She says something like vaguely sexual, and then they're both like, "Oh," and then they leave.
She was
they get horny. They go into horny.
She was the world's most attractive prostitute, I have to say.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't she like a famous person now?
I think so, and also I think that the casting for that
Melissa
was a little off because she looked like a Hollywood starlet, not a fucking.
Oh yeah, she's in 30 Days of Night. That's where I know her from.
Oh, she's from. Okay, she's
the other Alaska cop. I guess they're cops. Yeah, they're cops for a town of 30 people or whatever. I don't know if you need police officers at that point.
I can't believe she did nudity in this. She didn't need to do that. She would have been fine.
Well, I think this was one of her first movies. I agree, though. I don't understand the lack of swearing in this movie and the abundance of
show
female
breasts
nudity.
as much as possible, please.
That was the thing back in the day. That's what gets the butts in the seats.
Well, this is like around the time when it starts. You don't get gratuitous sex scenes anymore around the late 90s, which thank God, because we've talked about this on the show, I'm sure. But they just make me feel icky.
I can go watch porn if I want. I want to watch a story.
Yeah. But at the same time, there is no gratuitous sex scene in this movie. It is just
she just disrobes.
You can argue that at this point in the movie, she is doing it to seduce him.
She's working on him.
She wants him to spend money on her, so it's kind of like part of it. And I'm like, it's not like. It's not necessarily gross because she's even doing it like out of the corner of the room or whatever, and then you see sort of like a silhouette. It's not even like her full. I guess you do see a full at one point. She turns and puts on a shirt,
and to that note, I think the dead prostitute being naked makes sense too because.
But then you also see her later dead with her tits out as well.
Okay.
Actually, no, hers are covered.
She's covered. She's covered up.
You probably got paid for one nipple.
Yeah.
What's your name, honey? John. Well, that's an appropriate
An
name.
appropriate name. Yeah, I thought that was a little on the nose.
That gave me a good chuckle. That was funny.
A little on the nose, but yeah, I like jokes like that.
Yeah,
low-hanging fruit, but I like it.
I like the thing that I liked about that joke was that there was sort of a sub-joke within the joke, which is that he is discovering that that's his name at the same time. And I found that to be I was like, charming. And then she's like, that's an appropriate name. And I was like, ugh, God. All right, we get it.
You ruined it. You ruined it, and your breasts are out. Can we just move along from this scene?
And that we will. We'll move along from the scene. He's doing it to sort of like test himself, right? Like he's suspected of these murders. He knows that he's potentially a murderer, and he wanted to see if he could stop it. Jason, I know you didn't watch the director's cut, so you didn't get to see the part where her daughter comes out, a little girl.
I noticed that there were no kids in this movie except for the creepy kids until way later, and I was like, that's weird. But this makes sense that there was
super creepy.
There was probably some kids
There's two moments where this prostitute's little girl are in the movie, and she comes out and sees Murdoch, and that's almost like he's like has like a panic attack and is just like runs away. But I guess in the version that you saw, he probably just has the panic attack and runs away.
And then he goes up to the thing, and then for some reason, then he pulls out all the newspaper clippings that reveal that all these prostitutes.
Yeah, he probably hasn't gone through all. He's been going through a lot, man. He's got his wallet on his mind. He's got the fact that he's a killer on his mind, and now he's got to go high, get as high as I can.
No, the thought going through his head for this one is, can I kill a prostitute? What if he could have? Yeah. What if he was immediately like, I've got bloodlust,
he wanted to cheat on his wife.
No, this was him trying to go see if he
doesn't have any memory of that.
Yeah, this is him going to see if he actually has it in him to murder a prostitute.
Every memory that he has up to this point, Kalen, is from waking up in the bathtub. He doesn't have any memory of anything previous to that.
Okay.
So all of those.
But I thought he had a conversation with what's her face, Jennifer Connelly's character
after this scene.
But didn't he say to her that he was testing himself?
Well,
after. But I was just reiterating that. I wasn't going through that scene.
But I thought when
they do have a conversation about that later. But I was just saying that. I was not.
Gotcha.
I wasn't going through the scene yet. I was just saying that's why he was doing what he was doing.
It's all connected, man.
Yeah. Later in the movie, you find out that the thing I just said is true because he says it.
Sorry, Caleb. We just tuned you.
Yeah.
Turns out I work at a newsstand now. Fuck motels. Fuck sleazy motels.
I worked here for 25 years.
Yeah. I ain't never been in a sleazy motel, and I ain't never gonna step foot in one, never either. So he pulls out all the newspaper clippings. He finds all the murders in his pockets, which I assume were planted there by Schreiber. He
probably that little kid, that little creepy kid did it. I think it's Mr. Sleep.
I think the little kid is the oldest one of them all, if I was to guess.
Yeah, remember when she goes, "Kill him"?
Yeah.
Later in the movie.
That's what I'm saying.
They were twins. I heard they were twins. One's a boy, one's a girl.
Well, that's how they have to do it in Hollywood, because you can only have a child for half as much time as you can for an adult human being. So they have to like switch them out halfway through the day.
Switch you out.
So anyway, he throws them away, and then the strangers show up, and Mr. Hand reveals himself in sick ass glory, where he's just like, yeah. I mean, there was a scene earlier where they kill the hotel man. I guess that's not really super important. It is kind of, because it reveals a little bit of the plot, because when the police show up, the guy at the front is wearing his clothes, the same clothes that the original guy was wearing, but it's now a completely different actor. Like, to the point that they cast a black man versus a white man. They're like, just in case you're stupid, we're going to make it an entirely different race. Wait, so you can't confuse it.
There were non-white people in this movie?
It was probably still confusing, though.
All right. So the hotel clerk guy, when John Murdoch is leaving, is the guy from the newsstand later, right? The guy was like, I've been working here for 25 years. But as he's leaving, he's like, I told him $25 on the barrelhead or you're not in here tonight. And then later when the cops are there, it's a black guy and he's wearing the exact same suit. And he says, I told him $25 on the barrelhead or he's not staying here tonight. And like, it's basically the exact same dialogue coming out of a completely different actor.
My point of saying that is realizing that this movie had no people of color in it at all.
There's a couple. There's a few.
Well, it's mostly just wide shots of these fucking bald white weirdos.
No, there's like at least 3 or 4 people of color that have lines in the movie. There's like when he's leaving the car, he's like, "How do I get to Shell Beach?" And the guy turns around and goes, "You need the express line." That's yes,
okay, yes, you absolutely are right. Absolutely.
And then later when he's like, "Why didn't that train stop?" The guy who turns around is also a black guy. And he
Sorry for virtue signaling. I did a little bit of a virtue signal there, and I'd like to retract that. But I would still like to say all cops are bastards.
None of them are main characters. No. So, yeah. Not a single person.
And also, if you'll take a look at your background there, why aren't there any black strangers? Or Asian strangers, even?
I mean, there's no blood in any of these people, so maybe a couple of them could be. You never know.
Ooh.
Melanin's in your skin, not in your blood.
Don't you turn really pale when you die, no matter what your race is? I don't know how it works. Do you turn a different color?
That's interesting.
Hey Google, what color do you turn when you die?
I actually don't know.
I mean, you probably get paler, like regardless. But
my Google went off and scared the shit out of me.
It's like searching racist, googly.
Sorry, I don't know how to help you with that. Sorry, Caitlin, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, buddy.
No, not at all.
This is not a great conversation. We should probably cut it off.
No, we probably shouldn't. We're not.
We don't know.
I'm visibly sweating by this conversation. Actually,
I'm wearing a jacket.
Well, that's your prerogative, my friend.
I mean, hey, at least they represented people existing. Like they showed people of color. No, this movie is not a great movie.
You know what it is? It's like the aliens are just kind of picking up on the racism of the world at the time. You know what I mean? Just not to say reinforcing it, but just mimicking what they would have been.
Yeah, that's
like, according to these humans' bodies.
I don't think that was the intention.
Racism is a thing, so let's.
Yeah.
But you can use it. You can use it as an out.
I don't think that was the intention, but that is kind of a good point for like your headcanon to be like, well, humans were pretty racist, so the black people will be the servers.
No,
that was the aliens are saying that.
No, but you're saying it as the alien. So
okay, so
still you.
Kaylin, just smash that Gandalf pipe and we'll fucking just smoke a sativa.
All right, let's get off this topic because this is not. We're not well equipped to discuss it. We shouldn't discuss it, and this movie does not have great representation for me.
Do you want to know what I called the strangers through all of my notes? I knew they were called the strangers, like going into the movie. But do you want to know what I called them in my notes the whole time until
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
The weirdos.
The weirdos came then after that.
They're very weird.
I mean, that would work still.
They're very weird. And I don't think they call them the strangers until like
Later
a
on,
throwaway line towards the end.
It's all Mr. This, Mr. That, Mr.
Yeah. And I think Schreiber is like, the strangers, like, they come to our world and they steal our thoughts and they remix them.
It would be great if at that part when Mr. Book is like telling all the people to go to different areas and he said like Mr. Clean and it goes to one and he looks just like the rest of them, but he has like a big gold earring in his ear.
Yeah. And he's wearing a white T-shirt for some reason over his leather.
It's like stretched and it's all pointed out. Yeah, that'd be funny. If only it was a recent movie, we could spoof it in a video. So, discovering the nature of a person. That is basically what these guys are up to. And you don't really discover that within this moment, but you do discover that they can die. So they're not omnipotent. They're not
when he gets
gods.
the head cracked open? Is that the one?
Yeah,
is that
but you also see Mr. Tall. I can't remember what his actual name is. The guy who's super tall.
Mr. Annoyed.
He's in the Matrix. He's the train man in the Matrix. He's also in the Mad Max movies. He's in Star Wars. He's in so much
Is that why I
shit.
recognize his face?
Probably because he's been in other things, yeah.
What about no, never mind, different guy.
Can I say something about this is the only time that we see anything remotely close to gore. They're up on a scaffolding that's in front of this like clock hand thing.
It's the beach. It's the Shell Beach wave thing. Yeah.
Billboard.
Or sorry, it's a billboard, not a clock. My bad. But anyway, the hand is going back and forth, and John manages to push one of these dudes into the hand as it's swiping. It swipes the back of his head off, and it looked like the worst. Like it looked like the worst like practical gore effect ever. But in my head, what I was thinking is like that makes sense for it to look that bad. If they wanted it to look like human brains or human detritus, they would make it look like that. I think these people are like a gelatinous goo robot that houses.
They use our corpses. They use human corpses.
That houses. Wait, so that was supposed to be like a really good special effect of the back of a man's head.
What was that word you used, by the way?
Detritus.
Yeah, what's that?
It's like like some shit.
Well, what I think it was supposed to be was that the back of his head was just like chopped off and like a bunch of like goo shot out onto the wall. And
sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it was the worst special effect ever. I thought it was pretty all right, actually.
When he gets hit, it looks weird. But then when it shows
I thought that the splatter looked too much like strawberry jam or something, strawberry jelly. Like I didn't.
Well, it's black. Like it's completely black.
Really black.
Because throughout the movie, when these things get injured, they bleed black, and it's because everything in the body is rotted away. They're literally reanimated corpses.
Right. Actually, that's a good point. Because if you watch The Walking Dead and they get blasted, I didn't pick up on the point that they were corpses, reanimated corpses with those like electrode alien things.
Yeah, there's a point later where Mr. Hand and Murdoch are on a roof, and Mr. Hand says like, you know, we have created this world based on your reality, not ours. Like this is our representation of what you believe based on all these people we have here, and we use your dead as vessels. And like so they're basically just corpses that have these weird spirit within aliens.
That's awesome. That makes this movie so much cooler to me.
Yay!
There you go.
I went up a 0.5 in my fucking rating because of realizing they were this is a zombie undertone, like alien zombie.
And like I like when you look at some of them, like Mr. Book, like his head's all cracked up and shit, which I'm like, so I bet you that they use up these humans until the point that they can't take it anymore, or some of them do what that detective did where he jumps in front of the train. It looks like the guy who was Mr. Book might have like shot himself in the head, and then Mr. Book was like, well, I'll take this one, I guess. Like the smartest of the humans that break free are the ones that are making up this collective.
And that's why they want John. Well, spoilers, that's why they want John, because he's higher up on the evolutionary track. Yeah.
All right. anyway, discovering the nature of a person. That's what I wanted to talk about with you guys. That's what these strangers are doing.
Are we going to have a deep conversation right now?
Well, I don't think that this movie warrants just going through the scenes and talking about the scenes. I think this is like a movie that you got to talk about the theme of it. Yeah. Their goal essentially is to find the human soul, right? Like that's what they keep talking about. Like this soul that they speak of, we must discover what it is and how it makes them what they are. And like you're going through the movie and they've got it all wrong for the most part, right? They're like a human is made up of memories. That's all that they are. If we look at their brains, everything that makes a human is their collective experiences. So we're going to move their experiences around in an attempt to isolate the soul, because the soul must exist somewhere inside of them, outside of their memories, because that's what makes them unique. Because when we try and put them into these new situations, the soul seems to push forward and still represent who they are. And like I think that's a really cool philosophy and like a cool thing to explore in a way that you could never do it in reality, obviously, but like because you can't blank someone's memory and put new memories into them. But if you could, this is, you know, a very sort of oblique and bureaucratic way of trying to go about it, to discover what a soul is. Let me take all your memories away and put new memories in you and see if your soul still peeks through it, and if we can try and figure out what that is. What do you guys think about that?
Wait, who do you want to go first? Do you want to go first? Who do you like orchestrate this so that it's organized?
All right. Well,
so
Jason, you can go first. You said so.
I think about this frequently. About it comes down to sort of a nature versus nurture debate. But I think that your inherent goodness or evilness or whatever you have it is based on your experiences. So they are kind of onto something. But I think the human experience is bigger than trying to condense it down into what the soul is. Because throughout your lifetime, your goals will change, your who you are as a person will change, or it won't. Some people don't change. Some people will always revert back. And I think that each soul is an individual. Each soul is an individual sort of kernel. You know, like it's its own thing. And when it pops, that's your whole life unfolding, and then you can look back at that whole life. To take various memories and just jam them into somebody's head to just sort of come up with the ultimate version of what the human experience is, they're going about it all wrong. I don't think you can actually capture that. And hypothetically, this movie came out in 1998, so the technology to even know how the brain functions was primitive then. It's still primitive now. We can barely, map synapses, right? So this alien race comes down. They try to, they gather all kinds of different data. They want to steal the human soul experience by mixing and mashing up different memories. It's too nebulous. It's too nebulous.
Well, that's sorry. I think I got a little bit too vague with my question.
Okay.
What I thought was interesting was like the scene that we talked about earlier, the poor people when they become rich people, right? The poor people. I don't know if you listened to what they were.
Have you ever been poor?
I don't know if you've ever been poor. No. If you've ever if you listen to what they're saying, he's complaining about his job, but he's also very clearly he's hopeful for his position that he has at his place of work, and his wife is pretty supportive. Like they're not complaining at each other, they're not arguing with each other. And like when I remember that scene in my mind, they're arguing with each other, and then they're rich and they're just being shitty. But what actually is happening is he's like, oh, I hate working on the night shift. It sucks. I barely get to see you, and like I really wish I didn't have it anymore. But my new manager said that I might be able to get off it soon. And she said, oh, that's great, honey. I'm really happy for you. And then they turn rich, And then he's like, I couldn't believe the requests that they were making at the plant this evening. They're all full of shit down there. And she's like, oh, what do you expect from the lower class or whatever? And it's like, so these people, these two, completely flipped in their sort of like outlook and sort of outreach to humanity around them, right? Whereas the point of Murdoch, I think, is that like you can take it in one of two ways. One, he's just been injected with the idea that he committed all these murders and he's trying to fight what they have told him that he is, or he actually did commit all those murders. They were making him do that, and then on that final time when Kiefer Sutherland put his injector in and fucked up, he woke up during it, and then that was the real him, right? Like the unpolluted version of.
I do
of
believe
him.
that he committed all those crimes because I believe his body committed all those crimes. That's why he can. That's why he has flashes of that as part of his actual memories that are his memories outside of the ones that are implanted into his head. Because I don't think we're seeing. I don't think we ever. I think we see his actual memories, and that's why they're all jumbled and flashy.
Yeah. So, but. You also see Kiefer creating memories at a point, right? He's got like a little like a dash of sexual abuse, a couple of cloves of weird sex stuff, and
just
more sexual things. Just a few sexual things,
and also your dog ran away when you were 7.
Yeah, and then he goes and plugs somebody in the head with it. So. It's very difficult to watch this movie and break it down in this way because like you start to just like lose it when you're thinking about it.
Speaking of,
like,
nothing
could have happened.
What's your question? What I tried to start answering a question that
I wanted to ask about like, do you think that a person in this situation would be able to break through it unless, and only would it be like somebody like Murdoch who has been affected by the tune and. You know, his fingerprints being the proof that like
more likely
they can't control everything and something will eventually change.
More likely it would be the accident situation where Wachowski accidentally wakes up at some point and then he's kind of. I saw that as in the Matrix. Walensky, if you accidentally broke out of the Matrix, like you didn't know what was going on, it was just like be too much for your brain to handle. And you see it in it's a trope in movies where people go nuts and they start drawing fucking shit all over the walls and they're like, "I'm crazy. I've got to be the crazy one that's too crazy." When he was really onto something, you know, he was 100% correct, but it overtook him, and the only way out for him to stop having these intrusive thoughts was to clack himself, you know.
Right.
I think that's the more realistic outcome. I think that this is the Matrix-y bit of it is John Murdoch is sort of the one, you know. He's sort of
no, he is.
He kind of transcends. He can use his powers inside the tunings, you know, because he doesn't fall asleep like
throughout the movie. That like the other detective guy. He's one of the people that wakes up, but that happens every once in a while. I think they call them lost sheep or something.
That's what he said. He's like, every now and then somebody wakes up. Yeah,
and when they do, they either reset them or they murder them and then use their body as a vessel or some shit. Kaylin, if you wanted to answer that soul question, you can with my unmodified version of it.
Well, if you don't mind if I dabble a little bit. It is definitely something I've wondered a lot and for a good majority of my life. You know, what makes people do what they do, think what they think, act the way they act, behave the way they do, treat other people the way they, you know, decide to treat them. And I think, so when I try to think about it, I think about different factors, and I kind of think about, so one, there's, so at like kind of like the base level, you got your genetics, right? Like you got your physical makeup, right? Which, one, you'll be physically, you know, made, built, whatever, and you can perform a certain way with certain things or whatever, with ease, without ease, whatever. But also based on your physical makeup, that can also cause, or that's a projection that others will view and then have a reaction to, right? Like there's certain physical makeups that will just, and it could be the same physical makeup, two different people have different reactions to it, but like there's certain reactions or whatever that can come.
Are you
from
just saying that hot people get treated better and ugly people get treated worse? Is that what you're saying?
No,
is that what you're saying right now?
No. That's part of what I'm saying.
If you're hot, you're allowed to be a dick. If you're not hot, you have to be nice. So done.
So that's also that's definitely, man. I should just stop. Like, yeah, that way more simpler. But I want to try and be somewhat generic, not to say generic, but general, because like that is an aspect. But then there's also just like a physical aspect, like a small person versus a big person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like what you guys are saying is a part of the fit, and that's why I'm trying not to be specific, because it covers a lot of things. But there's the physical genetic makeup of you, right, that will produce various certain outcomes or whatever. There's your what's it called, nurture, like your upbringing, right? Like the way that you're raised by whoever it is that you're raised by. So there's your direct kind of like, teaching or guidance kind of thing, right? And then there's your environment, which is like the next level of your, things that affect you, right? Like of what helps mold you, because like in general, I think everyone is trying to succeed. And then so when something doesn't work for them this way, there's like, okay, so how do I need to change something so that because I'm trying to survive. Basically, it's like when I say succeed, survive, you know what I mean? Continue.
Right,
yes, but Master Bruce, some men just want to watch the world burn.
No. You're getting on a tangent. You need to focus a little harder here.
You might be true. But so I think about the genetic, I think about the upbringing, I think about the environment, but then you also see different examples of let's just say two people that are kind of similar in those different categories, but then have these completely different ways of presenting themselves. And so I think the genetic is an aspect. I think the upbringing is an aspect. I think the environment is an aspect. So, okay, so out of 100%, if you divide it by 3, right? Or actually, no, let's say you don't divide it by 3. Let's do 33%, right? So 33, that's 99.
Yeah.
That's divided
by... that's 99, yeah.
So that one little... sorry. No, I don't want to call it little. That last 1% is what I like to call your innerness.
I'm like genetically 1.4% Italian, so you're saying that I should focus way more on being Italian?
No, you should focus way more on saying "Mamma Mia" all the time.
Hey, you guys got some fucking spaghetti over here.
All right, Kalen, I gotta cut you off because you're taking a little bit longer than I thought you would.
He did it to me too. I went into the exact same thing that you were saying, and he was like, "No, I don't mean. That's not what I mean."
No. I mean, sorry. So what I was asking was, do you think that there is any way that you could have your entire life be changed in terms of your memories alone?
Okay.
And be completely different than the person that you are.
Okay.
If you were woken up today and you had no memories of your entire life and your memories were completely different, do you think that there's any way that you would still be anyway a little bit you? And like, I know that's a very difficult philosophical question.
Do you want me to
because
answer
that's what this whole movie is asking? The whole movie is asking.
In the sense of it's right away, or do you want me to answer in the sense that both scenarios that you're describing have a full life with them?
And I think also it depends on who it is, because obviously John can, and obviously William Hurt's character, the Inspector Bumstead,
Well, the thing is, we don't get enough of him being woken up to appreciate before he gets launched into space.
Yeah.
You never really get to see him dealing with like, is my mom real? Is my accordion? How do I know how to play this accordion properly? Like, did I ever know how to play the accordion? And like, that's sort of the crisis that this movie places upon us as the viewer, right? Is like,
So, Steven, to answer your question,
yeah,
I'll say it in this way. There was a time, and also like the way your brain grows, like there's certain things that, you know, form over time and shit, right? But anyway, so to answer your question, there was a time where I wish I was well off and all this awesome shit. There was a time. As I've grown older, I've thought that if that was the case, it's possible I might have been an asshole. And I'm actually happy for the shit that I've gone through to make me who I am now.
And I was the opposite. I was much more of a dick when I was poor. And now that I'm not poor, I'm much more temperate. I was a huge dick when I was poor.
I've met lots of people who are terrible based on their upbringing, and I've met lots of people who are extremely wonderful human beings.
Well, there's that too. Like,
that also had a terrible upbringing.
I had kind of a hard upbringing. Like, my mom was like a single mom, and I had like family members have to live with us, and like my grandmother had to babysit to scrape by, so I had all this, you know. And I had like, but I did have like lots of friends and stuff, and then somewhere around the end, like around high school, I was like, I want to just party and fuck off. But I wasn't like a dickhead. But all through my 20s, I was just like, it's all about me. Everything's for me. I got no money. I got time to burn. I'm gonna do.
And then I made a podcast where I call it my podcast every week.
Everybody get out. It's time for me to tell you my feelings. No, but the thing is like I grew as a person into my late 20s, early 30s, where I was like, you know, be nice to each other, you know, like, and it just so happened that helped me sort of see the forest for the trees, where I wanted to do better for myself, and through doing better for myself, I ended up, you know, having a couple bucks, you know, like getting a better job, moving up on the track, you know, and now like I'm not rich, but like I got no money problems.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I don't have a gold jet ski, but I could probably afford.
You need one?
I could probably.
I'm just glad to
afford
see
a
that
jet
none
ski.
of us brought up religion. That's great. I'm really glad that none of us brought that up.
No, me and Madison, my wife, were talking about this earlier tonight, and I had no religion growing up. Zero religion. An absence of religion, in fact.
I had a bunch of it, but it was not great.
I was raised basically atheist, but we believe in God. And I'd be like, to what end?
I was a Sunday school teacher.
Just God. You were a Sunday school teacher?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
You were like 17.
We need a whole other podcast to talk about that.
That's you can't unravel that today.
That's not just an episode. That's a whole like mini series.
I was raised agnostic essentially, and I stayed agnostic for a long time. And now I'm.
Is that the one where there's something you don't know what it is? Which one's agnostic?
Agnostic is it's too big. It's too big to.
Agnostic basically means that you do not say there is not a God, but you do not say that there is a God. You just don't know.
My version of agnosticism has always been like, well, if there's all these different religions and some of them can be vastly different, then nobody really knows what's going on. But there's got to be something.
I mean, at the end of the day, everybody is technically agnostic because you can't prove that God does not exist. So.
But now I tend to be more atheist and comedically Satanist.
I mean, if you're a Satanist, then you are not agnostic. You're a Satanist.
No, but I think
believe
it's funny.
that Satan exists.
I don't believe that Satan exists because it's
if you believe
Christian
Satan exists, doesn't
Catholicism.
God have to exist?
No. Also, Satanism is just a big fucking like middle finger to the actual Christian church. Like nobody.
The Church of
Satan
Satanism
exists.
is an actual giant middle finger to Catholicism, which
Yeah.
is great. And there are atheists that are so hardcore atheists they may as well be theists. That may as well be
What's
the
the
religion.
theist?
Theist is just the belief in a god, essentially.
Yeah.
So what I want, one last thing I want to say to that, the reason why I bring that atheism thing up is because Ricky Gervais specifically is so atheist. He's so staunchly anti-religion and anti-God that it's almost like he's the Jesus of the atheist religion. So it kind of becomes this whole like Ouroboros
religion all on itself.
Yeah, he's basically created like a writing around it, or like people have like circled around him to a point that they like will use him as an example every time. Yeah, it's
and that
silly.
he was the. I love Ricky Gervais's comedic works, but him doing that made me grossed out by hard atheism, because that's its own religion at that point. You're theist, your deity now.
Well, isn't religion just something that you believe in? Isn't kind of like science almost an extension of religion to an extent?
No, science is just doing experiments based on physical matter in front of you.
No, but the people will say this is this, right, in the name of science, and then years later either it'll be disproven or there'll be a more specific or added on version to it, right? So I'm not like, I understand what you're saying, like science has more of a proof aspect to it, but it's still a channel of belief or whatever, right? Like this is what I believe in.
Fair,
right?
But you can test scientific theories. You can't test.
All right,
only with the tools that you make.
Okay, Kalen, Jason,
and for Steven, I'm Jason. Hey,
we cannot turn this into a discussion about God and stuff. I don't want to talk about this at all.
Take it back, Steve.
I'd rather talk about the movie. So they eventually capture Murdoch and bring him in, and they bring him in for questioning. Bum Stretch, or whatever his name is.
We're only there. We only have half hour left on this podcast, man. You gotta.
Yeah, that's why I stopped you talking about God for 20 minutes. I was like, so do you guys think they could find the soul? And you were like, well, you gotta really boil it down to who you were and when you were there.
All right, let's get us through to when they take Murdoch into the underworld.
All right, so
let him do his thing. We're the ones that interrupted him.
That's the whole end of the movie. They when they're capturing him, they bring him into the station, and then the detective, the little kid detective, tells Bum Stretch that his shoelace is untied, and that's meant to represent self-doubt. He's no longer the detective that sees every detail because he saw a fucking book float in the air. Remember when the book floated?
What do you call this? Yeah.
And he basically like turns the interrogation onto the detective and shows that he doesn't know everything that's going on, and that everything that he says that's insane is true, and he doubts himself, and that's why his shoelace gets untied. That's why they did that.
Nice.
And then they go see Kiefer.
Do you know that because of the commentary?
No, that's just what it is. I'm pretty sure they don't say that in the commentary.
How do you know that? I mean, that's the feeling that you got, or that was the impression you got from it.
The whole idea behind him seeing the shoelace when he first walks in is that he's a detective who misses nothing.
Right.
The fact that his shoelace is untied, being pointed out by the young detective.
Gotcha. Reverse. Is
him no longer being able to focus around him and seeing everything, and that's going to give him self-doubt on himself. That's just. Yeah. It's just
like it.
Why would they have either one of those if they didn't pair together? The shoelaces go together, man.
Yo, we go together better than a shoe and its lace. Oh, I forgot to say I want to be the reason for the smile on your face.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they then team up and they go to Schreber's pool again, this is the second time we see Schreber in the pool. Only this time he's being visited by Murdoch and Bum Reach. What's his name? Reach around. Homestead. And they hold him at gunpoint and ask him to explain what's going on, which he does not do a very good job of. And he gives them the syringe, the forehead syringe. Murdoch puts it into his jacket, and then they go looking
which is
for
a straight up MacGuffin.
Shell Beach. It is a MacGuffin, but it's also a smoking MacGuffin in your jacket. Yes. What? Yes.
How do you think that you would handle being held at gunpoint? Oh, just wait. Never mind. I remember. I think you told me some story. It wasn't the gun, but anyway. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you mean when I got held up at knife point? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just run. I would serpentine. I don't know. I don't know what would actually
I punched
happen.
as hard as I could and I ran.
Yeah,
I punched and ran.
I'd probably try to fucking do the
fucking rush hour.
Gun.
Yeah,
I'd grab his wrist and fucking break his wrist. I don't know.
A gun is like completely different. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
They can shoot at you still. A knife,
not if it's not
and run away.
Not if it's not point at you. Look, like this is the only thing it has. You know how easy it is to miss that little line.
Okay.
Right, so
John Neo, the Matrix over here.
He's like, he's dancing like one of those like
in the mask.
From the mask.
Pull your fucking...
yeah. Caleb's like, you got me, partner.
You got me, partner.
Okay. So they go and they eventually get to the end of the road, which they thought was meant to be a bridge. They get into a little rowboat. They row out, and it cuts back to the aliens, and they're being like, or whatever. And then they have to figure out where they're going, which is just into more labyrinth and like. It's the whole city is like falling apart the further out they get, where it's clearly the area that they've sort of neglected, and they find through a door a big sign that says Shell Beach, and Murdoch and Bumstead tear down the wall.
Even the real name sounds funny.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be like Bumstead.
Bumstead. But Bumstead is how it's spelled. And they knock it down with pipes and stuff, and then eventually they rip it out. He uses his mind to blast it open, and as they do, they're like, whoa, and they realize it's fucking space. Yes, what?
My first impression, as soon as they realize it's space, I'm like, why the fuck aren't they sucked out?
Well, they kind of are.
There's like a.
I learned the answer. Yeah, there's like a force field gravity.
Well, you can see it. They like when the bricks go through it, it makes like a weird like.
Not on the theatrical though. Jason, I believe you can answer this. Did you see a force field?
No, I was gonna say it looked like they were being sucked out of like if you're on the top of a skyscraper. Just slightly sucked
actually.
out.
I kind of
because they were like they were holding on, and when in the next like couple of minutes when the fucking strangers come, and Bumstead and the guys they're struggling together, they get too close and they get sucked out.
Yeah.
They get too close to the edge and get sucked out.
I honestly kind of like that a little bit better. The effect they use for the force field, not great.
No,
and
clearly that was like a rewrite.
I would have kind of like no. It was the director's cut. He had a little bit of budget to go back and add some weird effects.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was also to clarify what was happening.
That's what I was going to say, Caleb.
I read about it. It was because people were like, "Well, why didn't they get sucked out?"
That's what I was going to say. They probably focus grouped it, and they were like, "What the fuck happened right there? Why? Like, what are the rules?" And they were like, "Okay, let's make some rules."
Yeah. Which is also like, why don't they all just get sucked out of the fucking roof then?
Yes, I immediately started to think that. Yeah. It was like, do they have to have like an atmosphere put in place?
So for me, my answer is it probably would have looked cooler without the force field effect. Yeah. And the fact they added it in for people who were like, it's like, fuck you, man. Who gives a shit? It's a movie about weird vampire monsters who have aliens inside of corpses that can change buildings instantly. Who gives a fuck?
We can allow certain disbelief, Steven. Not all of it.
Not all of them.
All right, well, that's fine.
That's what this podcast is here to do.
Also, Jennifer Connelly. This is our second Jennifer Connelly movie.
I was going to say, she still looked young in this. Is this after...
she always looks young.
She has a baby's face.
It was like... She's got the face of a baby.
This is 1998. No, she's like 35 in this movie, or maybe even 40.
She's like almost,
what's that movie where she's
20 years later than the like Labyrinth when we watched
Young Guns?
I don't think that's what it is. There's a movie where she's like an evil boss or something.
Like, did you say she's 38 in this movie, or it was 1998?
It was 1998. I said she's probably like 35 by this point.
Yeah, she was, 14 or something in Labyrinth?
In 1984 or 1982?
Yeah.
Yeah. she's like, I was like, wow, she looks fucking amazing. Why isn't Jennifer Connelly in more things now?
We should do a Jennifer Connelly.
But she's probably
trilogy.
like is she 70?
Rocketeer, anyone?
No, she looks even
I would
better
watch
now. Are you joking me?
The Rocketeer. I know because you like Milfy Milfs, but the Rocketeer absolutely fits into the Hey, did you see this one? And also Radio Flyer. They fit into this whole Hey, did you see this one? Idea.
All right.
Let's do a month. Let's do like next June. Do like Angels in the Outfield. No, okay. Fucking. What's the other one?
Let's not plan yet. Let's plan yet.
What's
Let's
the other
keep
one?
The spontaneity
With the
for
arm?
now. What one with the arm?
Kid of the Year.
I don't like
Rookie
baseball.
of the
Why do you
Year.
guys
Rookie
love
of the Year?
baseball movies so much? I hate them.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, I grew up on them. My bad.
I grew up on
Fucking
baseball
Angels in the
movies.
Outfield and Rook of the Year are definitely a good pair.
Yeah.
And Nacho Libre.
But then also do Radio Flyer and the Rocketeer and the Phantom.
Yo,
Phantom.
Affleck was the bomb. No, sorry,
That's
that's
a different movie. Yeah.
And also Radio.
Oh,
Starring
my
Cuba
gosh.
Gooding Jr.
No.
It's
He has the mind of a child.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And Jack. Let's do Mind of a Child month.
Yo, Jack was a pretty good movie.
After we watched
No.
Toys, I almost watched Jack just to be like, is it as good
was
as I
on
remember,
Disney.
or was I 10
You're like
when
a
it
good
came
palate
out?
cleanser, and you're like, oh god. Okay, so this is the point where Murdoch gives up because he's like, she doesn't even matter to me. She's not my real wife. Why would I give a fuck about her? And they're like, oh yeah. They like put the dagger to her throat, and he's like, you forget that I have all the memories of Murdoch in my mind.
I have John Murdoch in mind.
in mind.
In mind, yeah. I like that little wordplay.
And he cuts her a little bit, and then he gives up, and then he tells him to sleep, and he sleeps. And then they go on their roller coaster ride to hell or whatever. And he wakes up a little bit, and he's like, sleep again. sleep. And he does. And then he takes him down into the weird fucking, like, I don't know, it looks like some sort of like Olympian head with a clock inside it. And all the bald guys and ladies. Some of those people are women, by the way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they wanted to have like an androgyny to it all, where they're like, we're gonna mix them all together so no one knows who's who.
The head, by the way, reminded me of was it Schumacher's Batman with like remember those like fucking crazy gargoyle guys?
A lot of this felt like the
it's all like
Batman,
Babylonian inspired.
Felt like Batman
crazy.
Forever or Batman Returns and Batman Forever.
Batman Forever.
I know they were two different filmmakers, but they were set in the same version of Gotham, so it evolved.
Yeah.
Joel Schumacher took all of those Tim Burton ideas and just turned them up to
Tim Burton
11.
was like, I want it to be gothic, and then
and
Joel
did a-
Schumacher was
did
like,
a-
I want it to be gothic, but with like big muscular
Did a
men
Dutch
holding
angle.
up the buildings,
Just put some
And
Dutch
nipples.
angles and nipples on it.
nipples everywhere.
Nipples and Dutch 60s Batman Dutch angles.
Except you can't have nipples on girls, only on the boys.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to be reminded of.
I don't want to
nipples on
see
women.
gross women nipples. Gross. Yuck. Like, why?
I thought it was because like a rule or something.
Yeah,
No,
for
Joel-
sure. He got
Joel
away
Schumacher
with
was
everything
a was
if
an
he
in the
could have
closet
put nipples on
homosexual
Batgirl,
man.
he would have put nipples on Batgirl.
You think he would have put nipples on
For
her?
Absolutely.
sure he would have. If he could have got away with it, he definitely would have. He would have
Nice.
made a full.
That would have
Bat
been
Cop
that would have been
imprint.
made the
Like, it
movie
would have
that
just
much
been like
better.
a full like Statue of David style. If he could get away with it.
Super tiny. But
would've
that
been
shows
hilarious.
that just shows that you have your royalty.
Yeah.
Nipple?
Okay. Yeah. So then Schreiber comes in a weird dress form. It's like one of those things that you build a dress on, but like he's having to walk around in it for some reason.
The faces that Kiefer Sutherland makes
Kiefer?
while he's stuck in that thing are so funny. He's always like, "Wait, fuck."
because he probably was like, this
But
thing's
for
so hard to
some
walk in.
reason, I believe him. Like, why? Why
You
is it some
believe
people...
the Keef? You believe
Yeah.
the Keef?
Because
But
Kiefer
why
Sutherland,
Is it? Why is it? Like, is it
Kiefer
just
Sutherland is an excellent
He's a
actor.
very good actor.
I was gonna
That's
ask
No,
you
but
guys,
it's gotta
do you
be-
think?
it's got
Do
to
you
be a
think?
couple things?
Do you think
It's
he
got
had
to
to?
be. There's got to be instinct, but there's also got to be just the way his muscles happen to move.
Yeah,
because he believes.
Because I've made weird faces. Like do you guys ever make weird faces in the mirror? I make weird faces in the mirror, right? I look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Okay, but the thing is like good actors genuinely believe that they are in the situation that they're in. They can they can change their like somebody stabbed them in the forehead with a needle of memories and become the thing they were meant to be. Right. And like so it's like Daniel Day-Lewis or like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Do you know how much muscle control that takes, though?
Look at Jim Carrey. His whole face he can control every muscle in his face. Do you guys think that Kiefer Sutherland had to audition for this, or the?
Oh, I have an interesting story if you'd like to hear it.
I would really like to know about that because I when he popped up, I was like, what? I thought he was going to be the main character. I thought he was going to be the main character based on like I saw Kiefer Sutherland was in this movie, and I was like, oh, he's going to.
Kiefer Sullivan. His name's Kiefer.
I said Queefer Sullivan.
So he was not high on the list of people to have this role. In fact, the director wanted an old man to be the character. And he auditioned a bunch of old people that he wanted to be in the role. And then for some reason, somebody had sent the script to Kiefer Sutherland. And Kiefer, when he got the script, he was like, I think somebody made a mistake and meant to send this to my dad. Like he thought that, like even he was like, I don't know.
We get Donald Sutherland for this, even though he's like way beyond a movie like this at this point.
And then but even Kiefer was like pretty big at that time. But they had a meeting together, and then like the director was like, you know what, this might actually work way better than I had initially envisioned, because he then started to like twist the character in his brain to be like, how much more tragic is it that these aliens take this younger man and like force him to erase his own memories when he has like a whole life ahead of him that he could lead, but now he can't because he's bound to them and he has to serve them. It's a little bit more tragic than an old man doing it. And you would even kind of think that he would have less experience to figure out how to get out of a situation like this. And that was something that I learned through the commentary that I thought was like pretty excellent and cool. I was like, you know what, that's actually a really good choice. And I liked his character a lot. He was so weird and strange, and like that scene where he's like crying and covered in blood and having to like stab his own self. Like it's not even like one of them did it for him. He had to like like do it to his own head. That's so weird and creepy and scary. But yeah, that's the tale. What was your theory, Jason? I want to know your theory now.
I said it, didn't I?
No, I interrupted you. You're like, I have a theory, and I was like, I have a story.
No, that time I didn't have a theory. I genuinely just wanted to know if he had to audition.
No,
I didn't have a theory. I honestly didn't know. If anything, it was his relationship to like the Lost Boys and like being in a weird like genre-bending horror movie already.
Yeah, according to the director on the commentary, he didn't even consider Kiefer for the role, but he like sat down with him at the behest of like the studio and was like,
because you know
what, like this, and he was like, you know what, this is actually so much more interesting.
He's in the television program 24 literally like 5 years later, which that's
didn't you hear when he looked at his pocket watch at the beginning, it went dink dunk dink dunk.
Yeah. 5 years later, he's in one of the biggest shows of all time, and he's in this fucking 1998. I don't even know how to describe this movie.
Anyway,
amazing.
Mr. Book says we need to absorb ourselves into Murdoch. So I don't know what that means. Like they don't really explain what that means. I assume what it meant was they were all gonna like collectively turn into one big squid or something and then go into him.
They also say shut down the machine for the final
forever.
Shut down the tuning machine
forever.
He says forever. Like it's like that's so ultimate. That's forever is like a long time. It's forever.
It's the whole time.
Yeah, it's all of time. But he goes up and he has the black goo injector, but then he puts it on his chest and he says like, I'm going to do something that I regret, but I know you won't regret it, and you just need to believe me and
the old switcheroo.
I'm sorry, and whoop, 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 and he, stabs it into his head, and then you get the same sort of flashbacks that were happening throughout the entire movie, except Kiefer Sutherland's in every memory, and he's like, "Don't worry, John, just keep your spirits up.
Just focus.
All right, John, you can do it, John.
You're creating these memories.
You may be
yourself.
wondering why I'm in your memories, John, and it's
What,
because
Kalen?
I need to teach you about an entire lifetime of memories that'll train you how to defeat the bad guys."
When you put your hand up, Steve just talks more. So you just
Kalen,
gotta...
sorry, go ahead.
No. I wanted to wait and hear you. That was good. This
Amen.
is like a place marker. You know when you put
All right, go
Looney
ahead,
on the-
John.
Go ahead, give her.
No,
Just
you
say
know
what
when
you
you put
want
a
to say.
Looney on the pool table,
Nope.
they finish their pool
Yep.
game, but then they know that you're next.
But you don't explain
right.
to them what the
I
Looney's
said,
there.
go ahead, John.
Okay, so I just had this weird feeling. We were talking about forever, right? And first I was like, forever's like a never-ending thing, right? But then I blew up my mind, and I was like, what if it's forever in a secular sense, but hear me
You mean
out.
secular? Secular sounds like you're like sick, and you're just like doing a half pipe
Is it not
forever.
secular? Is it
No,
secular?
cyclical. Cyclical is the word you're looking for.
Oh,
Okay.
secular.
Well, thank you for enlightening me and bringing me from a level of ignorance to a level of correctness.
I knew what you meant though, so it's language. It's not ignorance.
Well,
I just wanted to make the half pipe joke.
He just wanted to be like sick, bro.
Yeah. Well, I could, throw me in that role. I'll do that shit too. But what if secular?
Cyclical,
Cyclical.
like cycle,
Like a circle.
like a circle or a cycle.
Sorry, one more time.
Cyclical.
So what if? So first, like we were talking about forever, and then my mind was like, ooh, forever, like nonstop, right? And then I was like, wait a second. What if it's cyclical? But what if it's so big cyclical that you don't live long enough or things don't last long enough to get to the reset?
Yeah, welcome to the fucking universe, dude.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
gonna die before it restarts, Kalen.
That's why religion is fucking frittata, because
That's why religion is secular, bro.
you can travel in a direction for infinite and you still won't get to the end.
All right, I'm gonna go be my stranger over here now. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was kind of cool, and I also like that Kiefer is now talking in his classic Kiefer voice.
Hello,
like,
I'm
when-
Queefer Sutherland.
where he's like, "Don't worry about it, John. You're gonna be strong one day." Like he's just like the whole time like talking in a very inspirational.
There's the scar too, or whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
he looks. It's like all of whatever they've because like I think it's implied in that like they did that to him, right? Like the strangers,
right.
abused him.
It's not
forever.
implied at all. They show it when he's all bloody. His eyes all fucked.
I know. I just mean like implied as in like they probably did a lot of damage to him to the point that he has like a weird speech impediment and like is nervous constantly. Like
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously they fucked him up when he's covered in blood and he's like.
I thought you meant his literal eye. That was very well shown.
Yeah, he was bloody. He was very covered in blood. But the whole point of that obviously is so that because earlier in the movie Mr. Book says like it takes many of your lifetimes to perfect the tuning. It's impossible for him to be able to tune without 100 years of practice. And, because he can essentially create any amount of time in terms of memory, he injects him with memories to be able to train him over like a lifetime of training, basically. So it's like showing him as a kid, like using his, it's like when they're like, teach me how to ride a bike. And he's like, oh, I know how to ride a motorcycle now.
That took too long. That took way too long. As far as data is concerned, that like couple seconds that you did that, sorry, I don't mean to be an asshole, but
the sound effect would have been really boring if I didn't make it as long as it was. I did it for aesthetic purposes. Yeah.
Even that was too long. That was too long.
I've got a hard cut off of 11:20 tonight, so we gotta.
Look at this guy. Sorry, go ahead, guys.
They fight. He breaks out of it. Like he wakes up. He has the powers now, Kalen, as long as it doesn't take as long as the last one, you can go ahead.
I wrote down DBZ blast fight yelling.
Yeah, I wrote down some things about how they just have
This is
like
when the movie gets a little too silly, and the whole time I was watching it, I was like, "This is very silly looking." Like,
they
all
just
of
go
this
like
is very
this
silly looking.
to each other, why didn't they just fist fight? Like, just fist fight with your technical.
They're using their brains.
So, what's that called? What's it called when it's like Neanderthal or whatever? What's that called?
Neanderthal.
Primitive?
Sure, primitive.
Primitive, yeah. So primitive.
I don't think that's primitive. I think you like charge up your fists and fucking get these hands. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that would be cool, actually. Yeah, if they were like, if he was fighting him with his brain, and then ran up and was like, and then he was like, and then got up and was like,
because I think the problem with this scene,
he's actually jacked underneath. Like,
I think the problem with this
jacked
scene is that they're
monster
using
Frankenstein.
CGI, and the CGI was the focal point. They were trying to be
But
like,
they were
let's
also
do
using
this
a lot
cool.
of really good practical, like
True.
they had CGI, and then they also
True,
had
I agree with
practical
you,
effects
but
coming up as well.
I think the problem with this scene is that they really wanted to use this effect that they had probably perfected at this point, and when when I do like when he's shooting mine bullets and he's deflecting them and the mine bullets are going off to the side. I thought that was really cool, but you don't just have them then do a thing where they mine bullet each other and it creates a giant explosion in the middle that blasts him back, like. And then
I
blasts
agree.
them
I
into the
completely
water
agree with
tower.
you.
But
I think this whole
the
thing
climactic
looks very
water
silly.
tower explosion clearly was a practical effect, which looked really cool, you know. But then we had the old like shredder hand, you know, coming out through the rubble moment where he's like, ah, looks like he was charging up again, and then his alien just comes out and fizzles away. So it was like,
Well, that's
it was
what
a
his
very
power is.
I know, but it was a very quite like if the alien should have come back out and there should have been one last moment.
Ooh.
But he was all covered in moisture. They're scared of moisture for some reason.
That's a
It's
good
never
point.
explained.
Like
a good
like
point.
slugs to salt.
Like
Listen,
slugs
I
to
agree
salt.
with you. I think that entire last battle is
It's not as dumb as last week where we watched just
silly.
humans punch robot like toys for fucking
But
45
I mean, like,
minutes.
it's not.
But
It like you watch this and then you watch like the Matrix Revolutions where Agent Smith and Neo are like in a lightning fight, like
yeah,
and stuff. It's
Yes.
like crazy. But like, you know, we have that as a reference point now. This didn't, so that was probably pretty cool at some point. But it's very clear that they're on strings and stuff. They hadn't perfected the string technology.
I did want to say one thing about the string stuff. So there's a scene that we kind of glossed over where we did talk about it a bit, but the city they're fighting during.
Is it when the kid bites?
No, they're fighting during a tuning, and he jumps onto a chimney to go up, but there's a moment right before that where he gets pushed out a door and he
Yeah, that's
falls
the bite.
out.
It's the bite scene. That's the...
Is it? And then he grabs on. There's
He
very
grabs
you can
onto
see
the
the
chimney,
rope. Yeah.
there's very clearly a rope. Okay, you guys noticed that too.
Listen, the further back in time you go with movies, the more ropes you're going to see. You're going to get used to it, Jason.
There's versions there. If you watch
What am I supposed
Ghostbusters
to
on
not like ropes?
if
guys
you
don't
watch
like
Ghostbusters on VHS, you can see the strings sometimes for some of the ghosts. So
If you watch the Evil Dead movies, so many strings, and they just don't give a fuck. They're like, who cares if they see them? I don't.
that's kind of part of the charm of the Sam
Yeah.
Raimi movies.
Anyway,
so
but yeah, in a
that's-
movie like this, probably shouldn't have been able to see a rope, but I also noticed that rope as well. So he shoots the knife into his face. He flies into the water tank. It blows up. He goes, "Wah!" And then he blasts into nothing. And then he comes down and he talks to Schreiber for a moment. And he's like, well, I guess I can make this world what I want it to be, or whatever. And then he's rushing back to the edge, the same sort of like tunnel they went through to get to that sign where he broke out from. And then we see one last moment of Mr. Hand, who comes up, and he's just curious. And I like this moment a lot. It's probably my favorite moment of the whole movie, because Mr. Hand is like so infected by his memories that he now is like intrigued, and he has like genuine human emotion.
It's like, what's next for you?
And he's
kind
like,
of
what are you
vibe.
doing? And then John's like, well, I'm gonna do this. And then Mr. Hand's like, I'm dying, by the way. Like, I'm actually dying right now. I cannot. We're not supposed to inject your memories into us because we can't handle it. And when we do it, it literally starts to kill us. That's why we
does
were
that
trying
mean they're like immortal? Like they're
That's why they were. That's why they were trying to figure out what makes a human human, so that they could isolate it and put it into themselves to become human. Because they don't understand. Like, this is why these villains are kind of like weirdly vampiric, tragic villains. Like,
it's
you know, like
the fact that we die and they don't.
They can die. They can die very easily. But
true.
They wanted to become more than what they were, right? So like a vampire survives off of feeding on our blood, for example, right? Okay. That is not inherently evil because they're just trying to survive.
And human sustenance and sunlight kill them.
Can they live forever?
Food or get hit, and that charges us up. Human food and
it's not made clear in this movie if they can live forever, but it is made clear that they desire something more. Like they want to become more than what they are. I don't know what their lifespan is. It's not explained in the movie, but they are very akin to vampires in my mind because like they need us to better themselves or to like sustain themselves.
But that's how everything is. Like, you know what I mean? Like animals eat other animals or whatever to live, right? They poop.
Yeah, so you wouldn't call us evil because we eat cows, would you?
Depending on the perspective you're looking at, if you're looking at
do you want
to
talk about perspective? Yeah. Do you want to talk about perspective, Caleb? Do you want to think about it like this? Plants rule overall, and they give us sustenance to keep us alive, so we die and become mulch, so they can foster their own beings. So really,
you wouldn't call a tree evil, right?
What's it called again?
Cyclical. Plants are in charge, really, and they don't feel anything.
Why cyclical?
Cycle.
Is secular not a word?
Secular is a different thing.
What is it?
It's like sectional, like sections of religion.
I'm sorry, this is not part of the show.
No, let's take her home, buddy.
Anyway, I just wanted to end with that moment where he is like, I'm dying and I kind of appreciate that you're gonna do something weird, and then he like, you know, lets him go. Like he doesn't try and kill him or anything. It's not like a weird moment where he's like, that comes at him. He's just like, I'm curious. Before I die, can you just let me know what's going on? And he's like, yeah, you're so stupid for trying to figure out who we are from our brains, and you looked in the wrong place, which is like implying that, like, you know, it's your heart, like how you feel, like feelings.
It's more complex than just a mishmash.
Yeah, exactly.
Memories.
It's not just memories. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he basically
which are part of it. They are part of it,
of course. And there's like what I'm
more nuanced.
Like the movie is more like, it's like the movie is doing this at the end, like, bing, you should have looked in the heart, you idiot. Like that's kind of like what it's doing, but it's nice and it's good and I like it. And then he makes the world into the beach. Basically, he turns it into mainframe from Reboot.
He had the sandy coast.
Yes, he adds a sandy coast around the outside and a bunch of water, and then he goes out and he meets his one-time wife, who he remembers. She doesn't remember him, and then she invites him on a walk down the beach, and it's very cool and beautiful. And I would have loved to have seen a sequel to this movie where he gets corrupted by the ability to manipulate the world around him, and he's like a weird god, and then whatever that it's a ship, right? Like it's going somewhere.
Wait till Squid Games 2, yo.
What?
Squid Games?
What does Squid Games have to do with this?
Wasn't the cop's brother or something the master guy?
Yeah, spoilers for Squid
I know, but I'm
Game.
saying I would have liked to have seen this character from this movie do something. I'm not saying I want to see Squid Games 2 where someone becomes corrupt.
Did I just ruin it for you guys?
No, I've seen it. I watched it.
Squid Games.
Squid Game.
So what if this guy is the cop's brother?
No.
He wins, but then he gets turned.
Dude.
All right, I'm going to cut you off because we need to end, and the movie is ended, and this has nothing to do with what I just said, Kalen. You fucking son of a bitch.
It does a little bit. It ties in with...
No,
part 2.
Yeah, I know. He's going to become corrupt. Okay, cool. He's going to become corrupt in the Squid Game 2. What I'm saying is I would have loved to see John Murdoch turn into a god. And
this is comic book adjacent, so realistically what happens is he loses his powers in the sequel. And the aliens...
No, I would have liked to have seen him become
I'm
a
not
bad
writing
guy.
it. Hollywood's writing it. I'm not writing it.
No one's writing it. No one gives a shit. Nobody watched this movie when it came out. They're not
Matrix
making a
came
Dark
out 1
City
year later,
2.
And just everybody forgot about Dark City. I'm sure
you know what? A
some
Dark City
I like
TV
that
show
idea.
would
Let
be
me
all
change
right,
all of it.
Yeah.
Imagine
But it
where
would
it
have to be from
follows a
the
bunch of
beginning.
people and they have to figure
Yeah.
out what's going on, and
It'd
then
have to
one of the aliens falls in love with a human or something. Okay,
with another alien, and that's that's the comedy.
that's the
They trick
twist,
each
is
other?
that it turns out they were both aliens the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard O'Brien was really cool in this movie. The clock is cool.
It's the sound of
Did
the
kill all these people.
monstrance
I'm just going through
clock.
my Roger Ebert made a commentary we talked about.
Justin Ebert.
This movie leans into being art and not just dumb film.
You're saying your inside thoughts out loud.
No, I'm just reading my notes. One thing that was really cool is that it was a noir story told from the perspective of the suspect rather than the detective, which is
pretty good.
Not done very often.
That's pretty good.
So let's move on. Let's go to our final thoughts. Let the tuning begin or commence. Sorry, commence. I just caught a little tiny fruit fly in my hand and killed it. So cute. Kaylin, you go first. Tell us how you feel.
I just had a weird epiphany. Okay, fuck. What did you say? 1 second. Oh, shit. What was the last thing you just...
I said it was a detective story told from the perspective of the suspect rather than the detective.
What did you say before that?
I said that the movie leans into art instead of just being cinema.
Okay. There was something that was said that made me write this down. I'm going to see if I can try and find it. Now I remember. So the way this movie was received, and then like what kind of happens as you move forward or whatever. So I can understand how this would have confused people. Like I was definitely, you know what I mean? It's some that you do need to pay attention to, and then you do need to watch again, which is, you know, what up everyone tuning in to, hey, did you see this one? It made me think of, some people might be at a certain level where to experience something is like not in their taste or whatever. And then sometimes as they grow, they could start to grow tastes in other areas or whatever, right? And then there's also the fact that, you know, you only get presented with what you get presented with at a certain point in time. And so what I wrote down is that younger generations get to experience more things sooner, right? So like you get to have a more robust experience of different things, which was a very roundabout way of saying I enjoyed this movie. Not only did I had to, but this movie made me want to go back to it to, one, enjoy it, and two, better understand it. And the editing, the production was all purposeful. And when you actually take into consideration, so, you know, the piece of art that it is, right, for what it's trying to say with the different things that it does. I was reading a thing, like one of the little things that I read about it was there's hardly a shot that lasts more than like 2 seconds or some shit like that. Like shit's always cutting, which kind of adds to that uneasiness and shit, right? Like, which again was all planned and intentional. And so I definitely recommend go seeing it. And if you're confused, watch it again and then keep watching it some more and enjoy the ride, and then let your mind form different thoughts and ideas of what you feel the world is and what you feel you should be, until you're never going to get the perfect thing, but you're always just going to work towards it.
Do you have a rating, or is that your rating?
That was a rating.
I've got a perfect rating for how you described it, Kalen. You're like the clock that's like, and then it hits, and it's like, and you're like, let the tuning commence. That's your rating. That's what your rating should be. Where everybody falls asleep, and you're like, I gotta come back and be awake next time that I watch this. All right, Jason, your turn.
Good, not great. 3.5 out of 5.
Ooh.
Jason, you get so mad at the end of these sometimes that I don't like it anymore.
What am I mad about? I'm just telling you.
You don't talk about it.
You want it to be
yell.
over.
You just disappointedly speak a number into a microphone, and it makes you seem so grumpy.
Listen, the movie's fine. It was fun to talk about. I'm not gonna ever watch this movie again. I thought it was a bit of a slog, but I don't think it could have been any longer or any shorter. Could have been longer, in fact. It does meander quite a bit in the beginning, but it does have a satisfying conclusion. And realizing they were corpses all along did put up this movie a full half-point grade.
That's a huge half grade for corpse people.
It really is, because I thought that they were just annoying, teeth chittering aliens who fucking didn't really know what they're talking about. We had some thoughtful talks about what it means to be a person, but overall, this movie kind of is a product of its time, and it's kind of a symptom of filmmaking from this era. And the symptom is that it's jacked up on. It's much like a lot of the 80s was jacked up on people with a vision. This suffers from the same problem of this, but the director and writer had a vision that they wanted to produce, but it just doesn't. It's just overtaken by the next decade of filmmaking. So it is the end of an era, and it is a good, it's a good like period to late 70s, 80s, early to mid 90s filmmaking, and it's sort of an extravaganza of that style filmmaking, but it has no place now. It doesn't work anymore, and that's why I was saying it felt like the filmmaker was trying to do a schlocky, jacked up version of an 80s movie with as much budget as possible. I'm sure going to see this in theaters in 1998 when I was fucking 13, my head would have popped. But The Matrix would have come out the next year, and I would have gotten a little bit older and a little bit wiser, and I would have benefited from The Matrix more overall than I would have ever benefited from this thing. It feels a lot like an 80s movie, but it's in 1998. So I think that 3.5 out of 5 is a very good rating. It's considerably higher than I think that the internet gave it overall, and I'm sorry to be grumpy. But
listen, that's a better answer. Just shitting out a number at us and then expecting me to be like, all right then, it's not what we're supposed to do here, man. People want to know your thoughts, your final thoughts, and those were some good final thoughts. But
people need to listen to us and watch us to fucking hear our final thoughts.
Oh my god, he is grumpy. He's in full grumpy mode. He wants to go watch wrestling. Okay, so this movie is like, imagine Roddy Piper versus Psychic the Cage Man. And he came in.
Psychic the Cage Man is a great wrestling name. Look, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be grumpers, but you know how I feel about doing a 2-hour episode of a podcast.
He doesn't even like a 2-hour movie, Steven.
Okay, I'll try and keep my.
I don't like talking about a movie longer than the movie. I've said that fucking.
But is it not fair?
I will try to keep my thoughts short.
We are easily on episode 75 of this thing now. I've been doing this show since like 2019.
So we have 3 viewers right now, and I don't know if they appreciate the way you're talking.
The 3 viewers are us.
No, don't tell me that.
Maybe
all right.
Maybe Brian is
sucked.
one of them.
I give it a fucking dick chopped off.
Dude,
versus
I'm sorry.
anal fissure.
I don't mean to be grumpy. It makes me grumpy. it makes me grumpy sometimes to talk way too long about a movie.
But the thing is, it happens naturally when we go off on tangents.
If we had 10 viewers right now, I'd fucking go another hour. That's the thing.
Can I finish my final
Sorry,
thoughts over
Steve.
here?
I'm sorry.
Fuck.
I'm sorry.
I like this movie a lot. I've liked this movie a lot for a very long time. I think that it evokes a very universally liked visual style that people can still look at today and find to be interesting. You can watch every frame of this movie like it's a tiny little piece of art. It's filmed like a horror movie, meaning that a lot of the time someone's framed in the corner and there's a lot of negative space, which gives you the feeling like someone's going to jump out and stab them in the back, which adds a lot of tension. The movie is filmed to be tense, which is good for a psychological thriller, which this movie basically is. It's also a noir movie, a detective story, a psychological thriller, plus a science fiction movie and a horror movie, all mixed into one thing. And that's the kind of movie that I like. So when I watch this movie, I get excited and I forget sometimes how much I like it until I watch it again. I think that the characters are very elastic and basic, but fun to watch. And the world that they are existing in is, you know, also elastic and basic and not really super interesting if it wasn't for the setting and the style that the movie is giving us. I don't want to go too much further into it, but I think that we talked about everything throughout in a positive light for the most part. I like the performances overall. I think that Murdoch and Bum Stretcher and Dr. Kiefer, they're all extremely interesting and so overblown that you can't help but like look at them like cartoon characters, and I like it. I like that. Yeah, I give this movie. I'm gonna continue on Kaylin's review, which was doom, and Kaylin's like, I gotta rewatch this, but mine goes like this, and it keeps going. I'm the one that keeps going. I'm gonna watch this again in the future. I know I will. I love this movie. It's great. So, now that we've gotten through all of that, let me just ask you guys a question. For Jason and for Kaylin, I'm Steven. I always do this wrong.
For Steven and for Kaylin, I'm Jason.
And for Steven and Jason, I'm Kellen.
I forgot. The question I was going to ask was this. Hey, did you see this one? Mr. Piano Man.
Are we playing music right now? Can they hear us?
It just ended. The music just ended.
Nice.
Penis work is
penis work.
bum
Penis work.
worthy.